Chairman, we are now live. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Lou, and good morning one and all. Welcome to this virtual meeting of Cornwall Council. Welcome to my fellow councillors, to officers, to members of Cornwall City, Town and Parish Councils, and to members of the general public. Before consideration of today's business, colleagues, I'm just going to go through the technical protocols for this online meeting. So today's meeting is being streamed live to the public via Microsoft Teams. If the live stream fails and we cannot share the proceedings, I will adjourn the meetings to give time for access to be restored. If we cannot resolve that technical issue within a reasonable period, I will call the meeting to a halt and the remaining business will be concluded at a future date. If an individual councillor, such as Councillor Bastin, experiences a technical issue, I may adjourn for a short period to try and re-establish their connection. If it turns out the technical issue cannot be resolved, we will continue the meeting as we will remain quorate. The public is able to watch today's meeting by accessing the live stream via the link in the agenda on the Council's website. The meeting will be recorded and uploaded to the Council's website. So I just want to go over some of the technical procedures for councillors at today's meeting. Colleagues, if you wish to speak, please indicate you wish to speak by inserting an X in the chat box on the side. As I call you to speak, I will remind you to switch on your microphone. We will advise you if for some reason you cannot be heard, so please assume your microphone is on unless we advise you otherwise. Please feel free to turn on your video when you're speaking, but do try and make sure your video and your microphone are turned off at all other times. I propose to take all the votes today by the raise your hand function on MS Teams. Members joining us by telephone will be asked to confirm their vote verbally. Monitoring officer, I believe that Councillor Flashman is joining us by telephone today. Could you advise if there are any other councillors who are joining us by telephone? Is it just Councillor Flashman?
The only notification I've had is Councillor Flashman by telephone.
Lovely, thank you. So to confirm, we will be taking the all votes by the raise your hand function today. If we do experience problems with that, however, we will return to the roll call. I'm hearing some noise interference. Perhaps all councillors, could you try and hit the mute button, please? Lovely, thank you. And if you could turn off your video cameras, I can see Councillors Bastin and Pete Mitchell at the moment. And as handsome as you are.
Can I just say that I'm on a phone at, this is Councillor Dawn, I'm on a phone at the moment because I've got technical issues with laptop.
Grand.
Hopefully to be rectified.
Grand, thank you.
I did say that in the technical check, but never mind.
Yes, no, I did hear you, apologies, but we will make sure that we come to you, Councillor Dawn, as well as Councillor Flashman for the votes. Grant. So where a member has declared a non-registerable interest, a disclosable pecuniary interest, or an interest by virtue of any trade union membership, they must leave this virtual meeting. Their departure will be confirmed and they will be invited to rejoin the meeting at the appropriate time. So to assist in facilitating this meeting and in order to give as many members as possible the opportunity to speak, I've again made the decision that member speeches will, as a rule, be reduced from 3 minutes to 2 minutes. This 2-minute rule applies to all speeches, whether a councillor is proposing or seconding a motion, raising issues as part of the debate, summing up or responding to questions. In some cases, members have asked in advance if they may be permitted to speak for longer than 2 minutes, and I will confirm where this is the case during the meeting. If any member needs to leave the meeting and is not intending to return, please can I ask that you pop a message for us in the sidebar. I'm proposing to take one break today. That will be after agenda item 11.1 and before questions from members to members of the Cabinet. I'm estimating this is going to be around 11:40, something like that, 20 to 12. But whatever time we reach that stage at the end of item agenda 11.1, I will break and then we will start again just before 12 o'clock so that we can respect the 1 minute silence together as part of the Marie Curie National Day of Reflection. I'm estimating that today's proceedings will finish at about 1:20, something like that. Members, I just need to say a few words with you before I move on to the next item of business about the pre-election period. As you're aware, the Council is now in the pre-election period that is often referred to as PERDA. The Local Government Association guidance confirms that during this period of heightened sensitivity, decision-making remains business as usual. Section 2 of the Local Government Act 1986, meanwhile, states that the Council must not publish any material which appears to be designed to affect support for a political party. There is also statutory guidance that the Council must have regard to, and it sets out actions that the Council must not take during the pre-election purdah period. Due to the requirements of the virtual meeting regulations, today's Council meeting is actually being live streamed, as with all Council virtual meetings during the pandemic. So the Council is therefore publishing the meeting live, but we have to be vigilant to ensure that no material seeks to affect support for a political party. All the decisions on today's agenda are business as usual for the Council, and we are not seeking to affect the support for a political party. However, I have taken some actions due to the Council being in the pre-election period. These include, I will be taking a different approach to how we deal with today's motion, namely that it will be referred direct to the relevant body without the usual opportunity for the proposer to present the context. Members will recall that this is consistent with my approach to motions at the Council meeting in November 2019, when the pre-election period for the general election had an impact on our proceedings. Any publication by Cornwall Council in relation to this meeting will be purely factual. No member will be quoted. Members, I'm aware that the monitoring officer has written to us all asking us to be mindful of our comments and interventions during today's debate, and to consider questions to Cabinet members or committee chairmen in the light of purdah in terms of their time sensitivity, and whether they could instead be addressed outside of or at a future meeting. I'm also aware that there are candidates for the elections in this chamber, and I would ask those members, please do not use this meeting as an opportunity to further your own personal political objectives. Should this happen, I will have to interject to ensure the smooth running of this meeting. I think it is important that during this period that Cornwall Council continues with its business, but please, I would ask you all that we respect the heightened sensitivity of the pre-election period and the restrictions imposed upon Cornwall Council. Thank you. That's all I have for my pre-agenda items I needed to share with you. And so we're going to actually move on to the agenda now. So it's agenda item number 1, which is prayers. And I'm very pleased today that we are joined by Reverend Stephen Wild. Could I invite you to put on your camera, please, Reverend Wild? Hello and welcome. You are, I believe, the Cornwall Methodist District Chair is your official title, but you are involved in so many different aspects of Cornish life, not least St Petrock's, which is a charity close to Cornwall Council's heart. So thank you so much for being with us today, and could I invite you to lead us in prayers, please?
Indeed, Madam Chairman, thank you very much, and greetings to all you councillors. We are praying for you at this time pre-election, and thank you for all that you do. You did great service to this county, and we've had an extremely difficult year, and yet you've coped with it so remarkably. So thank you very much indeed. I'm glad to note on this day that you're having the minute silence. We all live busy lives. It's good sometimes just to take a pause, and we need to remember today, and to stand on our doorsteps tonight at 8 o'clock with phones or candles or torches to signify the beacon of remembrance. A year ago today, fewer than 1,000 people in the UK had died of the virus, and the figure now stands at more than 126,000. Well, dear friends, for our churches, we've had an unusual time. We've not been able to assemble much for worship, and we can't sing, which is always frustrating for Christians. However, we have to say that people's understanding and exploration of spirituality has grown during the last year. And many of our online services attract more people than we used to get when we had the doors open and the organ playing. So what's the Holy Spirit saying to us about that? I myself, as the district chair, have been giving a message every morning for just 3 minutes with a little Bible reading and a prayer. What astonished me was that this was meant for Cornwall, but on the YouTube, it spread throughout the country and then throughout the world. And of course, as we know, Cornish people around the world are always glad to listen into Cornwall. And one particular Sunday morning, this is about 9 months ago now, the phone rang at 6:10 in the morning. I was awake, and it was a lady from South Africa. And she said to me, are you the Reverend Wild, Methodist minister? I said, yes. She said, oh, please, can you help me? I said, well, I will do. What is it? She said, well, my son, he's in England, he's in Cornwall, and he's homeless. He's in a terrible state. He rang me yesterday. He'd no money, he'd no food, and he was sleeping rough on the streets, and he just needed some help. Can you as the church please help? I said, well, I will if I can, but how on earth did you get my name? And she said, well, I have a friend who's a Christian, and when I told her this to ask her to pray, she said, oh, there's a minister online who's from Cornwall. Why don't you get in touch with him? He's called Steve Wild. So somehow she got my phone number. And when she told me this, I said, well, I don't know where he is. She said, well, he's in this place called Truro. So I said, oh, that's where I live. She said, well, he's on a bench near a river opposite some public lavatories. I said, I know where that is. Do you know, friends, that by 7:15 that day, somebody from St Petrock's, because I got in touch with them, went down, found the boy, took him to A&E and promised him, we'll give you a place to live, we'll give you some fresh clothes, we'll give you some food, we'll look after you. And when I rang the lady back in South Africa, she said, well, I've always been a bit of a skeptic, but I certainly believe in God after this. So I'm a vice chair of St Petrock's, but as well as saluting the great work that you do, I'm so glad that you support and try to help us at St Petrock's, because it is a great work. We're in Lent, we're thinking about the cross, we're thinking about the love of Christ as Christians, and I have a special prayer now for you at the start of your meeting. Let us pray. Dear God, we thank you for this time of Lent and for the wonder of your cross. Be with us as we think about all that has changed this year. We think of the families in Cornwall who've been so affected by the terrible virus. We remember all who work for the NHS and frontline work. We pray particularly for the hospital chaplains. We remember Mark, who is the team leader, and the great work that they have done this last year. Be close to us as we remember those who have died in Cornwall. Help us to trust that they are at peace with you. Show us how to best reach out to others with kindness and care as we have the many discussions today on the agenda. And may your hope shine out in every heart and home in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you. As inspirational as always, would you mind leading us in the Lord's Prayer, please?
Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Reverend Wild. It really was a pleasure to have you here with us today. And thank you for all you do. And please carry on doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless.
Grand. God bless. So moving on, colleagues, to item agenda number 2, which is apologies for absence. So far I have received apologies for absence from Councillors Evans, Hendry, Truebody and White. Are there any other councillors? I'm seeing somebody with their hands up. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I'm giving the apologies for the late arrival of Councillor Carol Mould, who has been called to a parish meeting this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. So late arrival for Councillor Mould, and then apologies for absence from Councillors Evans, Hendry, Truebody and White, but I see that Councillor Hannaford, you also have your hand raised. Sam Tamlin, is this for late arrival?
Yes, Madam Chairman, late arrival probably at 10:30 for childcare issues.
Yes, I understand his young son, who's 4 or 5 years old, has developed a cough, so he's taking him for a COVID test, which will be horrible to try and administer on a 4-year-old. Good luck with that, Councillor Tamlin. So apologies for absence then, Councillors Evans, Hendry, Truebody and White. Any others? I'm looking at the sidebar, I can't see anybody, so we're going to move on to item agenda number 3, which is declarations of interest. In accordance with the Constitution, I'm now going to take declarations of interest from any members for any items on the agenda. Will please members indicate any items in which you have interests and the nature of those interests. If you are aware that you have a disclosable pecuniary interest or a non-registerable interest in any matter being considered on the agenda, you must disclose it, whether or not you have already entered it in the register. Members will note that instead of Chairman's announcements on the agenda today, I have Chairman's closing remarks. This is to mark the last scheduled meeting of this Council. So I was just saying that whilst I wait to see if there's anybody with declarations of interest, and I cannot see anybody popping up. Nope. So today we don't have Chairman's announcements here. We've moved it to the end of the meeting. So moving swiftly on now to item agenda number 4 and leaders' announcements, please. Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mitten Dyer, good morning, colleagues. When I stood in front of you nearly 2 years ago to seek your support to become leader of Cornwall Council, I spoke of dedication to the residents of Cornwall and the need to work together in partnership. I hope you will agree that I have led from the front. Over the last year, we have shared the common goal of doing all that we can to mitigate the worst impacts of the pandemic. We have done this by putting residents at the heart of our response and by utilising the full range of our partnerships. When elected as leader of the Council, I spoke to you about 3 areas of focus: culture, devolution and tackling the climate crisis. Culture has been more important than ever during the pandemic. Our culture and creativity has been key to helping us through. The Cornish National Minority Steering Group has worked throughout this Council, and I would like to thank Councillors Foot and Cole as chairs, but all of those involved, councillors, officers and partners. We have been frustrated in some areas, but greatly encouraged by the work around a Cornish curriculum. Whilst we were not successful in achieving a tick box for the census, I'm pleased with the campaign that we ran to ensure people were aware of their options. We have achieved much in relation to Cornish culture, working in partnership through our Cultural Memorandum of Understanding with the opening of our National Archive, Crescent Kerno, and later this year of Gwarragy Kerno, our National Theatre in the Hall for Cornwall. The Cornish Mining World Heritage Site's recent management plan has been cited as a groundbreaking example of World Heritage in action. My thanks to this partnership and the officer team for their great work with a new website and membership scheme also launched during the pandemic. Our diaspora was one of the reasons that I said this 2 years ago. The Cornish are outward looking, welcoming, open and inclusive. And equality and diversity and inclusion may have been implicit then, but have certainly been explicit in our work over the last year, spurred on by the Black Lives Matter protests. My thanks to Justin Olusunday for chairing the Black, Asian and Minority Ethnic Steering Group, and all of those who have contributed powerfully. At the recent meeting of our strategic partnership, the Cornwall and Isles of Scilly Leadership Board, all partners agreed to support the creation of a Race Equality Council, and I believe we are making headway in becoming actively anti-racist. Within the Council, we have made changes and a wide array of partners have joined together. We continue to champion all the protected characteristics and can evidence positive advances across them all. In terms of being outward looking, our protocol of cooperation with Finisterre continues to deliver dividends for both partners, and I look forward to signing a memorandum of understanding with Brittany tomorrow. Later this year, we have the fantastic Cornish cultural prospect of the Ordinalia, Bunyan's Quay and Bunyan's Merry Azzic coming to Crescent Kerno, and the Ordinalia trilogy being performed in the Plenninguari at St Just. With regards to devolution, my thanks to Councillor Pollard and the previous council for all their hard work, which led to agreeing the Cornwall deal. We have been recognised by Warwick Economics through a government commission as the leading place for delivering against a deal. To briefly highlight two areas. Firstly, my thanks to Councillors Biscoe and Jeff Brown and the officers for their long-term work on One Public Transport. Bus franchising powers have enabled us to become the leading rural region for public transport, with through ticketing and contactless payments. With 102 new buses in the last year, we have the youngest fleet in the country and have been recognised in the government's bus strategy launched this month. We have the reduction in fares to come when public transport can get back to full use. Secondly, using our intermediary body status for European funding, we back deep geothermal projects which will contribute to making Cornwall net carbon neutral. The success of the United Downs project has led to the real prospect of a low carbon heat network for Langar. Unfortunately, the United Downs project is currently in the balance with new immigration rules, meaning that the team coming to drill from Europe to drill the wells are not being allowed visas. The recent Institute for Public Policy research report entitled Why Devolution Matters, the Case for Cornwall, highlights their successes, but also that we have outgrown the Cornwall deal and a bold new approach is needed from government to set us on the path to true devolution seen in other Celtic nations. We have been frustrated not to be able to achieve greater devolution, but there are ongoing discussions with government on this, and I know the next council will be keen to carry on this work. In relation to tackling the climate and ecological crisis, I said protecting our biodiversity is essential and that we must act now, and I'm pleased to report that we have. I have already given a couple of examples, and make no mistake, tackling the climate and ecological crisis cuts across all that we do. We have embedded the UN Sustainable Development Goals into Gillen Warbar, a strategic plan agreed across partners to take us to 2050. We have innovated to harness fuel from local farm slurry to power our vehicles, through to our Green Infrastructure for Growth project, Making Space for Nature, which was named as the best biodiversity project in the country in the Big Biodiversity Challenge 2020 awards. Our place as the UK's leading rural region has also been recognised by government, with Cornwall being the only rural region on the COP26 UK Mayors and Regions Advisory Council. We have done this whilst becoming the South West's only Ofsted outstanding rated children's social care service, whilst being the country's #1 deliverer of affordable housing, whilst ensuring democracy could continue, whilst delivering the hundreds of essential services that our residents rely upon, whilst facing the immense challenge of a global pandemic. We have stepped up to that challenge, working across the chamber, with staff still deployed into other roles and with more prepared to respond to changing circumstances. We will continue to respond to the pandemic now as we continue to live through it. Recent concerning modelling of a third spike later in the year should leave no one under any illusions that we will be living with this pandemic for some time to come. The Council, our partners and the public have come together in true one and all style, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you all. It has been an absolute privilege for me to lead this council through the most challenging of times. I want to take this opportunity to thank one colleague in particular, who, like the rest of us, never expected to find herself in a global pandemic. Councillor Hawken has been across the challenge of the pandemic from day one, always understanding the detail of the information, always able to convey this understanding across the chamber and to the public. In the most challenging of circumstances, Councillor Hawken has been calm, meticulous and steadfast. always exercising great acumen and acting in the best interests of the residents of Cornwall. My deep and sincere thanks to you, Sally. This is the moment where, if we were all in the council chamber, Councillor Hawken would receive a standing ovation. Thank you all, colleagues, councillors and officers. We have lived our values and delivered our aims and priorities. I hope you are proud of what we have achieved for the residents in our communities and across the whole of Cornwall. I am confident in what we have achieved together. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
And thank you, Leader. And I would just like to echo and amplify the words the tribute paid to Councillor Sally Hawken. Sally, you've been incredible. So, councillors, I'm moving on to the item agenda number 5, which are the minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, the 23rd of February, 2021. I'm going to move that the minutes of that meeting held on Tuesday, the 23rd of February, are correctly recorded and that they be signed by myself as the chairman. Councillor Mary May, Vice Chairman of Cornwall Council, could I invite you to turn on your camera and second the minutes, please?
Happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor May. And I'm not seeing any comments in the sidebar, so I'm then going to move on to the vote. I cannot see any hands raised yet, so that's good. Monitoring Officer, if I could call you in, please. And members of the council, please could you indicate via the raise your hand function that you are content that the minutes are correctly recorded and that they be signed by myself as the chairman. Welcome, Monitoring Officer.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Melanie O'Sullivan. I'm the Monitoring Officer for Cornwall Council. Chairman, if I may, I'm just going to take the votes on the phone there while other councillors vote by their hands up function. So please do continue to do that, councillors. Councillor Flashman, can I take your vote, please?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Dorr, can I take your vote, please?
Yeah, I've got my hand up now. I found it.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Councillor Dorr. So can I just check there are no further members on the phone? Chairman, I don't believe there's any more further members on the phone. I can see that the votes are coming in support of the minutes and we've exceeded our majority and therefore I'm happy to confirm that the motion is carried in relation to the minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Monitoring Officer. Thank you, colleagues. If you could now lower your hands, please. Thank you very much. So I'm seeing the hands going down. Okay. I'm going to give a couple more seconds for the hands to go down just to make sure before we move on to the next item on the agenda. There we go, just 3 left. And we're going to move on now to item agenda number 6, which is questions from the public. So I'd like to take this opportunity to remind everyone that, as agreed by Council, up to 30 minutes be given for questions from the public. In view of the live stream, I will be asking the public to read out their questions, and where the member of the public is not present, I will read the question. And today, colleagues, we have one question from a member of the public, and I believe Mr. Percy from Newquay, you are joining us by telephone. Mr. Percy,
Right, yes.
Hello, Mr. Percy, and welcome. Perhaps you could read out your question, please.
Good morning, thank you. In which specific chapter and paragraph of a publicly consulted document can the affordable housing cascades for the 4 Colwyn Parish sites, as stated in the Cornwall Council replies to public questions at the 10th of February Cabinet meeting and Newquay Voice article of 10th of March, be found?
Thank you very much, Mr. Percy. So I believe I'm going to invite Councillor Andrew Mitchell in to respond to you. Councillor Mitchell, if you could turn on your camera, please. And at the same time, Councillor Dyer, could I invite you to turn off your camera, please? Thank you. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Percy. As advised previously, there is a suite of documents that establish the Council's approach to affordable housing cascades. There is no specific document that sets out this out for Colwyn Parish, nor would we expect to provide a detailed parish by parish approach. The Cornwall Local Plan strategic policies establishes out how development will come forward and sets out different policy approaches to affordable housing depending on the nature of the proposal. Rural exception sites are permissible under Policy 9 to provide affordable homes for local needs. This policy states the council will secure the first and future occupation of the affordable homes to those with a housing need and local connection to the settlement or parish in line with the council's adopted local connection policies. Whereas other housing development will come forward on allocated sites as set out in the site allocations document plan. These sites, which are usually provided through extensions to towns, are planned to meet our strategic need to accommodate growth in Cornwall and affordable, oh sorry, hang on, I've lost my place, and affordable housing requirements are assessed against Policy 8, which establishes that affordable housing should be provided for eligible local households. We apply different affordable housing cascades to these sites so they are more flexibly able to meet our Cornwall-wide affordable housing need. The housing supplementary planning document states, under defining local need, housing need will always be considered at the parish level if a site is in a parish, or town level if the site is in a town. Appendix 3 of this document sets out that the council's local connection criteria is used in all section 106 agreements using the council's template to secure both rented and intermediate affordable homes for local people. The criteria are consistent with the council's Cornwall Home Choice policy, which may change from time to time. The section 106 template and further information on home choice can be found on our website. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Mr. Percy, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, this is these 4 colon parish section 106s are unique, and therefore I will have to consult with my fellow councillors and parish councils throughout Cornwall to decide in a democratic way on the way forward with this. You do not seem to have answered the specific question. Thank you.
Councillor Mitchell?
I'm sorry, and we do seem to be going around in circles, Mr. Percy, and I really do want to hopefully be able to provide an answer which you are satisfied with. As I say, it is difficult to physically meet, obviously, but if you want to meet with me and officers by Zoom or Teams, some web device based meeting, I would prefer to do it face to face, where we can hopefully try and draw a line and conclusion under this. There might not be an answer which you're totally and utterly happy with, but to sort of also get to the bottom of whether, you know, you're trying to say you wish to work with Cornwall Council and your parish to deliver more affordable homes directly within the boundary of your parish, or you're expecting that local needs housing will be met through the cascade system from neighbouring parishes, and I don't know, maybe we can look at that as well, what's needed for your area, because I'm sure we all want to do the right thing and provide local housing for local family who are in need. So you know, I'm more than happy, as I say, to meet and hopefully conclude with an answer which, even if you're not entirely happy with, you accept and understand where Cornwall Council is coming from.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell, and thank you, Mr. Percy, for raising this with us. And I'm sure Councillor Mitchell will take it up with you offline.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Percy. So we're moving on now, colleagues, to agenda item number 7.1, the Capital Programme Update. I'm going to ask Councillor Painter to move this and Councillor German to second. The revised recommendations are set out on page 3 of the addendum pack, which was circulated yesterday afternoon. So Councillor Painter first, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So the capital programme is a long-term programme of projects delivering on significant improvements, facilitating and enabling key projects for the council and for the residents of Cornwall. The latest overall programme now totals almost 1.4 billion and includes major planned expenditure of 530 million on homes for Cornwall, 415 million on green and prosperous Cornwall, 320 million on connecting Cornwall, and 105 million on healthy Cornwall. The report's recommendation is that the capital programme is uplifted by an overall amount for the new schemes and additional funding that's been recommended by Cabinet and the Leader of the Council for inclusion since the capital programme was last approved by full council on the 23rd of February. This includes an uplift of 11.170 million for the Penzance Future High Street Fund, comprising of 10.403 million of grant funding provisionally awarded from the Government's Future High Street Fund, and 0.767 million of co-funding provided by the council. This provides a significant opportunity to directly invest into identified priority schemes within the town centre to support economic recovery and deliver long-lasting impacts for the whole of Penzance. An increase to the programme of 7.853 million for capital grant funding provided by the Government's Cabinet Office to support required upgrade works at Cornwall Airport Newquay in readiness for the G7 summit. Due to the urgency of the works and the fact that the council has only very recently received notification of this funding, an urgent executive decision was required by the Leader on the 22nd of March to recommend on to full council, and that this is added to the capital programme. Further additions to the capital programme as part of the Council Performance Report Q3 and Q4 projections 2020 to 21 report, including most notably 30 million to carry out targeted investment into renewables and low carbon technologies, 12.6 million of additional funding from the Department of Transport for potholes and highway maintenance, 6.4 for the enhancement of the council's estate as part of the transformation of facilities management, and 1.7 million for the refurbishment of Chuff House. I'm happy to move the recommendations and take any questions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Painter. Councillor German to second, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm happy to second these important investments for the residents of Cornwall, and I expect that some Cabinet colleagues may want to come in on the detail of these investments. Thank you very much.
Indeed, Leader. I've already received prior notification that Councillor Jeff Brown would like to speak, particularly around the transport issues, and Councillor Hannaford has put an X in the box. So I'm going to go to Councillor Brown first and then Councillor Hannaford. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. Just really to elaborate a little bit on two of the points, the 12.589 million structural funding maintenance of the highway. That went through Cabinet last week. It's an announcement from the government made on the 15th of February by the Department of Transport. It's our share of a £500 million pothole fund for 21-22. And just a little bit more detail around the infrastructure funding of 7.853 million from the Cabinet Office for Newquay Airport. That's to improve the existing taxiways and aprons to enable us to effectively handle air traffic and ensure that the G7 summit leaves a long-term economic legacy. The resurfacing work is going to be carried out by Cormac, who are experts in that sort of field, but we've brought in a technical groundworks team, Dyer and Butler, who specialise in the sort of groundworks technical aspects of the work, having already completed works for Heathrow, Gatwick and Manchester. So we've got experts doing the job. It is a very tight timescale, but they're confident that they'll complete it well before the G7 summit.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Hannaford, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would like to draw attention to the Capital Fund commitment of 30 million in the Low Carbon Technology and Renewable Energy Fund outlined in Appendix 2 as agreed in Cabinet in March. This fund will enable the Council to deliver an established pipeline of renewable energy projects across our estate and with partners that will accelerate the delivery of the Carbon Neutral Cornwall Action Plan. This will be through new installations like the existing 2.3 megawatt turbine at Benton Teague, already saving 2,800 tonnes of carbon a year, but the potential to buy and repower existing renewable generation across Cornwall. Ramping up the production of renewables will not only save carbon, but it will provide a bankable return for the council and for the community. It will support the local supply chain of contractors, aiding our economic recovery through our new solar framework, which will also realise savings for third-party hosts like farms, schools, innovation centres and leisure centres, and help us, most importantly, to meet our aim to be net carbon neutral by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hannaford. Colleagues, is there anybody else who wishes to speak to this? If there is, please put an X in the sidebar. I can see a hand raised. David Harris, Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. Very simple question, I think. One of the increases in the capital programme is £6.4 million for the facilities management contract. And if I can read from the papers of the Cabinet, the Council's contract for hard and soft facilities management for its circa 200 operational buildings is ending, requiring a new contract to be negotiated for implementation in April 22. This is a significant contract and will require capital funding for urgent backlog maintenance in the first 2 years to ensure health and safety compliance to our operational buildings. Just a couple of simple questions. How can maintenance be a capital item? Surely this is revenue. Indeed, is this potentially the case of a ball that was kicked into the long grass, finally finding its way back onto the pitch? And is it being suggested that some of our buildings today would actually fail health and safety tests? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. I've got Councillors Desmond and Edgerton who've also indicated they wish to speak, so I'm going to bring them in first and then I'll come back to Councillor Painter to respond to your questions. So Councillor Desmond first, please.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning.
Love the daffodils, by the way.
Oh, I like your background too.
I have two simple questions. The first is this. At the Cabinet meeting on the 10th of February 2021, the overall capital programme was reported at paragraph 4.32 as 1,340,022. The papers we have in front of us today report the capital programme to be 1,288,521. And I note that the difference between those two is 13,062,000. Is this discrepancy, this 13 million uplift, accounted for by the monies that have been provided by government? And the second question is a fairly straightforward one. Under the in 7.1 at page 15, the Langarth Garden Village is shown in the Green and Prosperous Cornwall section at 132,494,000. Why is it in the Green and Prosperous Cornwall portfolio?
Okay, thank you. And I see Councillor Edgerton. I'm going to bring you in first and then go back to Councillor Painter to respond. Councillor Edgerton.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I just wanted to get clarification on this £8 million for the airport. This Councillor Brown, is it basically resurfacing the runway for £8 million, which seems quite a lot of money for a runway which hasn't had much use for the last year or two? You know, why does it need doing? Was it really defective? I'm just astonished that if Councillor Brown could explain, that's just what it is. It's £8 million for resurfacing a runway.
Councillor Brown, can I bring you in first before I go back to Councillor Painter?
Yes, of course, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Egerton, for the question. It's not the resurfacing of the runway. I thought I said it's taxiways and aprons. We're going to have a significant number of fairly large aircraft in, and the aprons aren't substantial enough to take the weight of those aircraft for any length of time. So that's what most of the work is for. It's around the periphery of the main runway. The main runway is fine. It's the taxiways and aprons that need strengthening, reinforcing and resurfacing.
Thank you. And you can confirm this funding is coming from government, isn't it?
It's from Cabinet Office. It's the 7.853 million. Yes, absolutely.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Painter, if I could come back to you to respond and sum up, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, firstly, Councillor Harris's question. So it's a mixture of revenue and capital works that's needed to be done. Because we're getting to the end of the current contract and looking to provide the next contract, we need to clear up backlog maintenance. I think in the previous contract, it didn't properly address all of the backlog maintenance issues, but so there is some catch up to sort that out. So we need to do that first before we can let this new contract and address all of those items that need addressing and make sure that all those health and safety works are also brought up to scratch. So we've got several different contractors working on the current contract, but they'll be brought together in the new contract that we're letting. Councillor Desmond, on the precise figures and changes, we'll get back to you on those just to make sure that we get those right. I think it does get confusing with the amounts of money coming in and out and the different amounts of money coming through to make sure that they do all add up to the correct figure. But I do have faith in my finance team to make sure they do obviously get those numbers right, but they will come back to you and make sure that they address your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Painter. I see that Councillor Harris has put another X in the box. Did you wish to come back on that point, Councillor Harris?
Yes, please. I'm sorry, I don't think Councillor Painter's answered my question of how can we charge maintenance costs to capital, and my other question of is it being suggested that some of our buildings would today actually fail health and safety tests?
The answer is no, we're not saying they would fail health and safety checks. And the other answer is obviously if we're replacing things within maintenance, it's a bit like the highway, whether or not it is capital or revenue will get split out depending on what those works are. So that's how they will do it.
Thank you. Councillor Desmond, did you wish to come back?
Yes, Councillor Painter didn't answer the other question, which was why is the Langarth Garden Village accounted for now in the green and prosperous Cornwall portfolio? If I could have an answer, that'd be great.
Indeed. Councillor Painter.
Good question. I think it's just where it's been put because of the garden village. I don't know if Mr. Langley would want to come in just to say why that has been moved as far as the capital uplift.
Miss Langley, if you're on the call, if I can bring you in, and when you come in, if you could introduce yourself with your title, please.
Hello, thank you, Chairman. I am Tracy Langley. I'm the Council Section 151 officer. In answer to your question, Councillor Desmond, what we have been doing is putting our capital programme into sort of re-engineering them into portfolios. And the Langarth Garden Village falls into that portfolio because that is the most appropriate place to put it. So we've portfolioed to make it simple to see and to align it with the priorities of the council.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Monk, I see that you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a question, I guess it would be for Councillor Brown. Just regards up at the airport, it was mentioned that they're going to do quite a lot of work on the aprons to expand the capacity up there. Can you confirm that no green spaces will be built on up there or damage to any of the existing woodland? Just an idea on what the scope of work is. Thanks.
Councillor Brown?
Yes, happy to confirm there are a significant number of old aprons and taxiways around the edge of the airport. It's those that need to be reinforced, strengthened and resurfaced. We're not looking to build new structures up there. It's doing the work to improve the others. And just to also add something I did neglect to mention, also to improve the lighting on the runway.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Monk, if you could lower your hand, please. Thank you. That would be helpful. Grand. So with no further questions, and Councillor Painter has already summed up, so I'm going to go to the vote now. So I'm just checking first of all that there are no hands up, and I can confirm that there are no hands up. Monitoring Officer, I'm going to bring you in, please, just to confirm that there are no hands currently raised.
I can confirm
Oh, there was one.
So we have
Sharon
one
Dawes
hand
put her hand up. Grand. So I'm going to go to the vote. All those in favour, please now raise your hands. We are voting in favour of the capital programme update. It's the revised recommendations set out on page 3 of the addendum pack.
And Chairman, while you're doing that, if I may, I'll just take the vote from the people on the telephone.
Thank you.
So Councillor Flashman, please can you confirm your vote?
4.
Thank you. Chairman, I don't believe we have any other members on the telephone, so that concludes the telephone votes. We'll just give it a few moments for those hands to come in.
We hit 100, yes.
So, Chairman, I can confirm that we have 100 votes indicated for on the hands up function.
Lovely, thank you. If councillors, you could now take your hands down, and once all the hands have gone down, I will go into the vote for those members who wish to vote against, and then after that I will go into the vote for those members who wish to abstain. So at the moment I'm just lowering my own hand as well. We still have 12 hands raised, and as soon as all the hands are down, just to repeat, we're going to go into the vote for members who wish to vote against. Still have about 8, 7, 5 hands raised. Okay. Grand. So all the hands are now down. If you could confirm that, please, Mel.
I can confirm that all hands are now down, Chairman.
Thank you. So now we're going to vote, councillors, all those who wish to vote against the motion that is on agenda item 7.1. Anybody wishing to vote against, please raise your hand now. No, I can't see any hands raised, Mel.
I can confirm there are no votes against the motion.
Thank you. So now votes against, please. If you would like to, sorry, abstentions. If you would like to abstain from the vote, please raise your hand now. Councillor Desmond. Councillors Edgerton and Councillor Jenkins.
Chairman, I can confirm that we have 3 abstentions, and therefore, Chairman, I can confirm that that motion is carried.
Thank you. Grant, if you could now lower those councillors who have their hands raised, if you could now lower them. So we're going to move on to item agenda 8.1. I can still see one hand raised. Loveday, if you could just lower your hand, that would be grand. Thank you. So this is item agenda 8.1, and it's the review of the financial regulations and procedure rules and budget and policy framework. Before opening the debate on this item, I would kindly ask all members that you focus your discussions on the behaviours you wish. Oh, sorry, I think this is in the wrong section. I'm going to go to Councillor Pollard first, please. Councillor Pollard to move, and Councillor Eddy then will second this. It's the recommendation that is set out on page 21 of your agenda pack.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Morning, everybody. Mitten da. I'm very pleased to propose the recommendations on page 21. This is again another proposal from C&G to clarify the regulations and to avoid duplication, and to clarify the paperwork which backs up the procedures of the council. Constitution and Governance held joint workshops with the Audit Committee, and the Audit Committee fulfilled their responsibilities by discussing the proposals in detail, and I know that they fully support the proposals as laid out. So I'm very happy to move, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eddy, your Vice Chairman. Are you happy to second, please?
I am, Madam Chairman, but might I be allowed to say thank you to Councillor Pollard for so ably chairing the committee, and to all committee members who've basically revised the whole constitution with the very able support of Democratic Services. So thank you to all involved. But I'm happy to second, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Indeed, it has been a mammoth task, and it's good to know that the whole process is streamlined now for the future. So I'm also going to invite Councillors Harris and Desmond to comment on this. They have been involved in their roles in the Audit Committee. So Councillor Harris first, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, as Councillor Pollard said, Audit approved these regulations. We had a separate session to look at them. We went through them in great detail. I spent a number of hours looking at them. I'd like to say thank you for the officers for looking at the details of these, but I'm delighted to recommend these to full council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Desmond.
Thank you, Chair. The outcome of the review of the financial regulations is due in large part to the excellent work of all those officers behind the scenes supporting the work of the Audit Committee. And our committee members, including the lay members, have played an insightful and challenging role through the whole process. And I personally would like to thank everybody, all of them, for everything that they contributed to it. But I wish to pay my particular respect and gratitude to our chairman, Councillor David Harris. His knowledge and his firm management of our work at Audit has led to the outcome of numerous excellent pieces of work, and for this he is due in substantial part my personal gratitude, and I think the gratitude of the committee as a whole. Thank you very much, Chair.
Indeed, thank you very much, Councillor Desmond. I see Councillor Taylor wishes to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Councillor Pollard for his the work that he has done. I did want to ask a particular question, if I may, on page 71, and that actually refers to the grants and sponsorships. And my particular question is in relation to the discretionary grants and contributions that seem to average about £3 million a year. Could I just have some clarification as to who actually does authorise the discretionary grants and contributions, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. And I can see that Councillor Biscoe also wishes to raise a question, so I'll bring you in first, Bert, before going back to Councillor Pollard.
Chairman, I just listened to what Philip Desmond had to say, and I very much accord with his view about the chairmanship of David Harris, but I wouldn't like to let this moment go by without also acknowledging the chairmanship of Joanna Kenny, whose chairmanship preceded that of David. And indeed, I think both of them have worked together quite a lot on the Audit Committee to make sure that the work of the Audit Committee is focused and as challenging as it should be.
Thank you. And I echo that. I think all the members of the Audit Committee deserve my undying praise, because numbers aren't something that's not my special forte. So thank you so much for dealing with very challenging, from my point of view, very challenging issues, and establishing some very clear procedures and practices for us to follow going forward. Thank you all. So I'm going to go back to Councillor Pollard, please, if you could respond to the question.
Indeed, thank you very much. To Councillor Taylor, I can't find the particular element of discretionary grants on page 71. Obviously, all monies have to go through financial regulations. If you're asking who gives permission for discretionary grants, well, again, those decisions are made by the granting authority, whether it's probably cabinet. Certainly, the leader and so on have no powers for their own money. It all has to go through due process. So I can't find the section you're referring to, but I can assure you that the regulations apply to it as in any other way.
Councillor Pollard, thank you. I'm going to bring in the monitoring officer because I believe she may be able to answer.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm grateful. And one of the things that we were seeking to do in terms of this document is to provide some oversight around that decision making. So just in response to Councillor Taylor's question, who makes decisions and levels of authority is set out from page 36 onwards. So that's where Councillor Taylor can find her answer in relation to that issue. It's set out on page 36 onwards of your agenda papers.
Thank you. Colleagues, if there are no further questions, I can't see any other X's in the box. No, in which case I'm going to move to the vote and call the monitoring officer back in again. You thought you just snuck away there, but here you are again. Councillors, I'm going to invite all those who wish to vote in favour of item agenda 8.1, that's the review of financial regulations and procedure rules and the budget and policy framework. It's the recommendation set out on page 21 of your agenda pack, and I'd like to invite you to raise your hands now if you are in favour of that. Monitoring officer.
Thank you, Chairman. I can confirm that before you call for that vote that no hands were up and therefore we're content to proceed with the vote. I'm just going to take the vote on the phone. So Councillor Flashman, can you confirm your vote for me, please?
For.
Thank you. Chairman, if we just give it a few moments, I can see that those numbers are increasing. We'll wait to see when they take their natural pause and then I'll confirm the number. So, Chairman, we seem to have a natural pause in our vote and I can confirm that we have 101 councillors in favour.
Lovely. Thank you very much, councillors. If you could all now lower your hands. And once they have all been lowered, I will then go to see if there are any councillors who wish to vote against this. I can see currently that there are 5 councillors still with hands raised. Just a few more to lower their hands. Grand. Just one left. Councillor Callan. Lovely, thank you. Grand. So, councillors, if there is anybody who wishes to vote against this, please could you raise your hand now? No. I'm going to give it monitoring officer another couple of seconds.
I can confirm that there are no votes against this item.
Thank you. So currently there are no hands raised. I'm going to ask councillors if you would like to abstain from this item, please raise your hand now. I see one councillor wishes to abstain.
I know that we have one abstention.
Thank you. So therefore this recommendation is carried. Is that correct, monitoring officer?
Yes, I can confirm that this recommendation has been carried.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you, councillors. And I can confirm that all the hands are now lowered. So we're going to move on to the next item in the agenda, which is agenda item number 9.1, and that is the Code of Conduct. So before opening the debate on this item, I would kindly ask members that you focus your discussions on behaviours you want to seek through the revised Code of Conduct for the Council's future membership, rather than using this as an opportunity to comment on any previous Code of Conduct complaints. So I'm going to invite Councillor Wills as Chairman of the Standards Committee to move this and Councillor Jenkins to second it. Welcome, Councillor Wills.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, and good morning, members. Mitten da. As we are aware, the Code of Conduct is subject to a periodic review by Cornwall Council. We set up a working party in the Standards Committee to look at the Code of Conduct that was issued by the LGA, the Model Code. The current Code of Conduct in Cornwall, used by Cornwall Council and all 10 parish council, is based on the statutory code that was used prior to 2012, and it's undergone some minor changes over the years, but the Standards Committee have considered each time the code has been reviewed that the provisions of the code are well understood and they are ample in case law. The Code of Conduct needs to be adopted by Cornwall Council to support its duty to promote and maintain high standards of conduct by members of the Council as required by the Localism Act of 2011. The Standards Committee assumes ownership, of course, of the Code on behalf of the Council and also monitors the operations of the Code in conjunction with the monitoring officer. I have to say, Madam Chairman, a big thank you to the Working Party for looking through this and also to our legal department, our monitoring officer and our head of corporate governance, all of whom have done an outstanding job. The Code of Conduct, of course, is subject to change. We are waiting still for the Secretary of State to issue statutory law which will allow lay members to vote to bring in new sanctions. That hasn't come yet, but we're looking forward to that coming to us very shortly. The recommendation is a simple recommendation. It is only one line long, and it reads: a recommendation to the Council that the Code of Conduct be approved. I'm happy to recommend that recommendation to Council. I know my Vice Chairman, Councillor Jenkins, is happy to second, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Councillor Wills. Councillor Jenkins.
Yeah, thank you. And if I may say a few words, as chair of the working party, I'd like to endorse what the chairman said about the work of the working party, which is made up not just of elected Cornwall councillors, but parish representatives, parish clerk, and independent lay people. So I will say that this code of conduct and the amendments to it, which have been incorporated from the LGA recommendations that came out, as well as the government guidance, is unanimous across the bodies within Cornwall plus independent people. So I'd like to thank all of them for the hard work they did to look at it, because the first working party was on the 20-something of December, just before Christmas, and then another one in February, and it was quite a tight timescale to get the consultation out, because we had to wait to see if the government changes to the sanctions, etc., were going to come out, and they didn't. So we had to go out for consultation straight after Christmas in January. And again, I'd like to thank the parish councils who've commented on that, and all their comments have been considered and incorporated where necessary. So I think we've got a very good code of conduct. It's held up as an exemplar to other parts of Britain as something that they should follow, and actually most of what was in the LGA code of conduct had already been was already in the Cornwall code before the LGA recommendations came out. So I think we've got an exemplary code of conduct, and I'd commend it to everyone.
I would agree with you, Councillor Jenkins. Councillor Malcolm Brown did notify me in advance that he wishes to speak to this. So I'm going to invite Councillor Malcolm Brown in to speak, and I see that after that Councillor Burden has popped an X in the box. So Councillor Malcolm Brown first, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I want to thank Councillor Wills, Councillor Jenkins, and all the councillors involved in the work that has produced this, whether Cornwall councillors or parish councillors. But I just wanted to flag up for the future that I'm sure they will acknowledge that really the step forward which has been taken under the advice from the government and the local government association isn't as radical or as far-reaching as we would like. And I would just like to mention, really, for the future, I think 4 things to my mind still need to be addressed. One is the adequacy of the sanctions for councillors who offend. Secondly is the treatment of persistent offenders. Thirdly is sanctions for people who complain unjustly against councillors. And fourthly, the detailed way that our system works, which seems to mean that if somebody has a complaint against them, they don't necessarily know that until the final decision is made. That I'm sure there are reasons for that, but it doesn't seem right. There's been a lot of media interest in code of conduct issues recently, perhaps surprisingly, but I suppose that's relating to one particular parish council up country. And I do accept that Cornwall is one of the leaders, but I think we mustn't be complacent in those who are in the next council, I hope are going to take the opportunity to move forward even further. But thank you very much for what you've done. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond, Madam Chairman, if you want.
Councillor Wills, yes, I think we've got Councillors Burden, Jordan and Mitchell. I think if we invite those councillors to speak first, yes. Councillor Burden.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks to Loveday and Paul. I've always been an advocate for the statutory code, but I'm intrigued by you talking about intimidation. And I think some of our parish councillors have been off-putting to them because they've been intimidated, and you know their role is not a huge one, but when they're intimidated and freedom of information and all that, they feel that they don't want to be even doing that work. So can you enlighten me? I was reading page 95 and 2.7 and 2.6, Guide to Intimidation. Will that have to be looked at by a new working party and a new council?
Thank you, Councillor Burton. Councillor Jordan, please.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Yes, I was involved in the Code of Conduct with Sally Lloyd-Jones in the old North Cornwall District Council back in the 90s. So I'm well aware of the Code of Conduct and I supported it 100% because of what was happening back in the 90s with parish and town councils. But my observations over the last 12 months have somewhat soured my opinion, because it's the way it was monitored by the officers that have left a very sour taste in my mouth. And I think we need to be more, when someone makes a complaint, it ought to be investigated fully. And if people are lying, then there should be some comeback on that. And I think that we have to be very careful, whether it's a parish councillor that's complained against or a Cornwall councillor, that we make sure that we get to the truth. And what shocked me was when the complaint was made against me, I found I cleared myself, and then the officer went back and said, can you come up with something else? Now that was very, very wrong. And I was shocked by that action. So I think we need to be more careful about the way we investigate complaints. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell, please. Pete Mitchell.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Loveday, for this report. I'm very pleased to hear Malcolm talk about the other side of the coin. I think we're held to very high standards, and so we should be. But also, and I spoke with Loveday this morning about the other side of the coin as to how we support councillors, especially with the new council coming in. A lot of young councillors, perhaps, hopefully more women councillors coming in, who bullying and intimidation from members of the public or from wherever needs to be investigated and taken to account. And I'm very pleased that we're actually looking at that to move that on very quickly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Desmond.
I just wanted to make a plea for us to show respect and consideration to our parish and town councillors. These are people from our communities who put in a huge amount of personal effort out of their sense of duty to their communities and their genuine desire to care for the problems they have in their communities. I've met many of them, and I think they're all heroes. I've got a chairman of Camborne, Cambrai Parish Council, who with her family has produced thousands of masks free since the beginning of the pandemic in March last year. So I would say that these general obligations on part 2 on page 103 need to work both ways. We need to treat our parish councillors and town councillors with respect. We must avoid bullying them, and we must give them as much care and support as we possibly can. The rewards that they get from what they do is people in their communities saying thank you. Well, I want to say thank you to all of those parish and town council who do the most extraordinary works on our behalf.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Here. Thank
Happy
you. I
to
think that's the
respond,
end of
Madam Chair.
the questions. Yes, if you could respond, please, Paul.
Yeah, I'll be
Councillors.
as quick as I can. Thank you very much, Councillor Desmond. I'm sure we all echo your sentiment there on the hard work that all town and parish councillors do put in. The points raised by Councillor Brown, I can assure you those will be looked at as we move forward in the new council. We are still waiting for the primary legislation, obviously, to come from central government, from the Communities Department. As regards intimidation, harassment and bullying, we know of councillors, we have produced a guide pack which was sent out to all councillors last year, including a pocket-sized guide, and I can assure councillors that again in the new council that guide will be reviewed. It's important for us as a body to understand how we as a corporate body can help councillors if they feel they are being intimidated, harassed or bullied by members of the public, especially at town and parish level, to help them. And we have a duty of care to our members and to parish councillors as well. I can assure Councillor Jordan that all complaints are fully investigated. He's referring to a complaint, a historical complaint, and I won't be drawn on that at this time, Madam Chairman. But the recommendation as proposed and seconded is that the council approve the code of conduct. I think Councillor Jenkins just wants to come back on one
Yes,
point.
thank you, Councillor Wills. It was very clear. And Councillor Jenkins.
Yeah, really just to say that I think we've worked as a good team as part of the Standards Committee, and to thank the chairman, but also to say that, you know, we have put into the work programme for the new council, for the council to consider how, for the Standards Committee to consider how anti-bullying policies within the council can be applied to members within the council, but also, you know, as has been expressed, further to protect parish councillors. We do get a lot of complaints and not so many congratulations when we're out there and about doing things, I think, and I think sometimes people don't realise how hard parish councillors and Cornwall councillors work for their community. So that it is in the work programme for the new council, so hopefully the new council will be able to take that forward. And meanwhile, we have already been told, those members who went to the wellbeing meeting, that a wellbeing strategy for members is being developed within Democratic Services. So hopefully that will be the next focus, to ensure that people can get the support that they need when they need it. So anyway, thank you to the chair, thank you to the Standards Committee for all the hard work they've put in, and I recommend the recommendation.
Indeed, thank you. And I have to say, the Standards Committee, I sit on the Standards Committee too, and it's one of, well, I shouldn't have favourites, but it's one of my favourite committees because I think of the interventions from lay members, from parish councils. It's a real meeting of minds, and I really relish that. It's excellent work. Mel, I wonder if I could bring you in to talk a little bit about the well-being going forward for councillors, because I know that is something that is very dear to a lot of the councillors' hearts currently. So perhaps if you could just, I know there are lots of policies and lots of plans that are being put in place for the next administration. If you could just speak to that briefly, perhaps.
Yeah, certainly. I'm happy to speak to that, and I think it's fair to say from an officer perspective that the pandemic has really driven that, and that we've done a lot this year as well. So just to make some members be aware that we've redesigned our democratic services, and as part of that there is more of a focus on welfare. So we've got, and apologies I haven't got all second, but we've got Debbie and we've got Charlie, who are leading on that welfare aspect, as Sarah Goodall, a really honourable member of staff, sadly departs the organisation. So we've made sure that our service fits to support that. But over the last year, Chairman, we've created guidance for members. We've ensured that counselling is available for all members, which is something that we haven't proactively done before. And we've also had our member check-ins this year, which for some of you might have wondered why we were doing that, but just calling in on you all just to see how you are and make sure that everything's going okay. And that is something that we're actually proposing in the new council that we will continue to do on an annual basis. And also this year we did our member survey, and I'm really grateful for all those councillors who responded, because that helped us inform how we responded to the pandemic. And I think we recognise that, again, that is a useful tool that we'll be using in the new administration to ensure that we are supporting the needs of members of Cornwall Council. So hopefully that's clarified the position, Chairman. Happy to add any additional points.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Monitoring Officer. So I can see the Councillor Burden wishes to come back.
Just to thank for the response, but I think when the parish council and parish clerk are intimidated, where do they turn for help? What guidance can we give them, you know, and then they know the right route to go?
Councillor Wills, did you wish to come back on that?
Yes, Madam Chairman, sorry, I switched off my camera and muted my mic as per procedure, unlike Councillor Code there, who we can see scratching his chin, looking very athletic, I must say. Yes, of course, it's different for parish and town clerks because they are employees. They if they feel they are being intimidated, harassed or bullied, they must go first to the chair of that particular authority. If again they feel they have no help there is the Society of Local Council Clerks, which they can go to, the Cornwall Association of Local Councils as well, of course, but they are public servants, not civil servants. They are employed by the local authority to act as clerks. we don't have a procedure in place for them because they are not elected members. And I understand Councillor Burden's frustration, and I understand also that some clerks do feel at times, especially in meetings when they do get quite hot and the debates and what have you, and some things that can be quite said that are quite cruel, that they don't really have a form of redress. That's not for us to look at. That's something that needs to be done, I think, by the SLCC, the Society of Local Council Clerks, and the Cornwall Association of Local Councils.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wills. So I'm not seeing any further crosses in the box, so I'm now going to move to the vote. The recommendation, as Councillor Wills has read out, it's on page 91 of your agenda pack, and it is voting on the Code of Conduct, agenda item number 9.1. So I'm going to bring the monitoring officer. Councillors, if you are in favour of this, please raise your hands. I can see quite a few hands going up.
Thank you. And while that's taking place, I'll just take the vote on the phone, Chairman, if I may. So Councillor Flashman, are you able to confirm your vote for me, please?
For.
Thank you. Chairman, we'll just give it a few seconds. I can see that the numbers are still increasing, so we'll just give that a few seconds for those votes to come in.
Thank you.
Chairman, I can confirm that it looks like we've got a steady number in terms of our votes for. I can confirm that we have 100 votes for.
Lovely. Thank you very much, councillors. If you could now lower your hands, and as soon as they are all lowered, I will go on to invite any councillors who wish to vote against it to raise their hands, but well, I'm still just waiting a little bit for some councillors to lower their hands. Just a few more councillors to leave. Councillors, I still have 12 people with their hands up. Until they're all down, I'm afraid we can't move on to the next section of the vote. So I currently still have, it's going down, 7-6. And those buttons are tricky to find sometimes, aren't they, colleagues? Just two hands raised now. And one final one to go. Grand. All the hands are now lowered. If you could confirm that, please, monitoring officer.
Chairman, I can confirm that the hands are lowered.
Grand. So now, councillors, if there is anybody who would like to vote against this item, which is 9.1, please raise your hand now. And I can see 4 hands raised. Any other councillors who wish to vote against?
Chairman, I can confirm we have 4 votes against.
Grand. Thank you. And if those councillors could now lower their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions, councillors? I can see 1 abstention.
I can confirm there's 1 abstention, and therefore the recommendation under agenda 9.1 has been carried.
Okay, thank you very much, councillors. And so we're going to move on to the next item of the agenda, which is the approval of revised fees for relevant protected sites. It's item agenda number 10.1, colleagues. I'm going to invite Councillor Hayward to move this, and then Councillor John Martin to second the recommendation. You're going to find them set out on page 111 of your agenda pack. Welcome, Councillor Hayward.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. The panel considered this report. The fees are normally raised in line with inflation every year, but last year, April 2020, there was no raising of fees imposed. So this year, they have been proposed from April 2021 as listed in the report on Appendix 1, and I am happy to propose this recommendation as set out.
Thank you, Councillor Hayward. Councillor John Martin, Councillor Martin, if you would like to.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'd like to second that proposal and recommend we support these recommendations. And I'd also like to thank the officers involved in preparing this report for their hard work, not just for this report, but for the administration. Thank you very much.
Indeed, over the last 4 years. Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillors, is there anybody who wishes to speak to this? I'm going to give a little bit of time.
Jim.
Councillor Flashman.
Thank you. On behalf of the committee, I'd like to thank Sandra Hayward and John Martin for chairman and vice chairman of this committee. This is one of the highlights, I think, of most councillors that are involved. It's one of the most welcome committees that we go to. We're able to make real decisions, and I think that over the years I've been involved with licensing since 2002. It's been a real pleasure to be involved with all the councillors involved, including our senior legal man, Mark Andrews, and obviously Rowena Bremner, who has a very difficult job keeping minutes, Carol Green, and Angie McGinn, and all the licensing team that have backed us up. I'd like to go to page, excuse me a moment, works in default on page 124 of this proposition. In my ward at the moment, we have some default on the licensing requirement. The enforcement team have been involved, but one of the biggest problems are that they've actually brought in a new park home and sold it on the site before enforcement.
30 seconds.
I cannot understand why planning hasn't been involved and put a stop notice on the work that's being carried out there. They've got past the agreed amount of park homes on the site. This is at St Dominic Park at Harborough, and I would like to see some forward action immediately. Other than that, I'd like to thank everyone, and thanks very much for giving me time to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flashman. I don't think Councillor Hayward is going to be able to answer your question, are you, Councillor Hayward? Is there an officer that could be nominated to respond to Councillor Flashman offline?
I'm not able to respond, Chairman, but I'm sure that Angie McGinn will be able to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mel?
Yeah, I was just going to confirm we'll be able to get Councillor Flashman a response. As a local authority, we have a number of enforcement powers that we can operate. The mobile homes provisions is actually governed by specific legislation in relation to how we enforce, but happy to take away Councillor Flashman if you want to get in touch and we can get a relevant officer to look into that particular issue for you.
Thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Councillor Flashman. Thank you, Mel. So, councillors, is there anybody else who wishes to speak to this? Councillor Hayward, I don't know if you need to sum up at all.
No, it is what it is, and I'm happy to propose the recommendation as set out.
Thank you. So to set out, councillors, on page 111 of your agenda pack, at the moment there are no hands raised. So I'm going to ask the monitoring officer back to confirm that position and then invite everybody who's in favour to raise their hands. Mel?
I can confirm at the time you called for the vote, there were no hands raised. I'll just, while we're getting those votes from other members, Councillor Flashman, please can I take your vote?
For.
Thank you. We'll just give it a few seconds, Chairman, just to wait for those votes to come in. Chairman, I think it's a shame we haven't got saffron buns in the long gallery when we talk about hands down to encourage. I think we are going to miss that this year, Chairman.
Indeed.
Right, Chairman, I think we've got a halt there on the voting for, so I can confirm that I've got 93 votes for.
Lovely. Thank you very much, councillors. So if you could now, anybody who has their hand raised, if they could lower it, please. Thank you. Just a few more to lower still. Just a couple more to lower still before we can move on to any votes against. Just 1 or 2 more. can still see a couple of councillors. Okay, I think that all the hands are now lowered. Oh no, they are all lowered. Mel, if you could confirm that, please.
Yes, I can confirm all hands are lowered. Well done all.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're now going to move to any councillors who wish to vote against this. Please could you raise your electronic hand now?
I can confirm that there are no votes against.
Thank you. So then we're going to move on to abstentions. Any councillors who wish to abstain from this vote?
I can confirm we have 2 abstentions.
Thank you.
Oh, make that 3. Apologies, Chairman.
3 abstentions. I think some people are having issues with connection, which is why they're having to abstain.
I can therefore confirm, Chairman, that the agenda item 10.1, that the recommendation has been carried.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you, councillors. So that means we're moving on then to item agenda 11.1, which is motions. So with motions, it's important for members to be aware that under Procedure Rule 12.3, any motions that have been moved and seconded stand referred to the relevant committee unless I exercise my discretion to allow the motion to be dealt with at the meeting at which it is brought forward, where it is considered to be convenient and conducive to the dispatch of business. So I will confirm my decisions on each of the new motions today. However, as I advised earlier in the meeting, due to the pre-election period and this being a period of heightened sensitivity, I'm afraid there has been one motion tabled, which was agenda item 11.1, the support for Cornwall's shellfishing industry. However, I'm using my discretion and I will be taking this motion as being proposed and seconded and referring it to the Cabinet without the usual opportunity for the proposer to provide the context. Apologies, but in this pre-election period, this is our only option. So, councillors, it is now 11:30. There is a National Day of Reflection today being spearheaded by Marie Curie, and that is a 1-minute silence at 12 o'clock noon today. So what I'm proposing is that we take a break until 11:55 so that we can go and speak a little bit about reflections for before the 12 o'clock silence of 1 minute, and then we after that 1 minute silence when we all join together in the 1 minute silence. We will then go on to questions from members to members of the Cabinet, and we have 1 hour for that allocated for questions from members to members of the Cabinet. So we now have about a 20-minute break before 11:55 when we will reconvene. Thank you, councillors. Oh, and please could I advise you to turn off your cameras and your microphones in the 20-minute break, just to make sure that there is no interference with the live stream. Thank you. Lou, I'm just going to ask for your confirmation that we are up and running with the live stream link before we proceed.
Yes, Chairman, we're still running live.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Lou. And welcome back, councillors. So as advised earlier, today, it's the 23rd of March. It is the 1-year anniversary of the day we entered the first lockdown. And the nation is coming together today to reflect on the lives lost during the coronavirus pandemic. So Marie Curie has done some research, and there are probably about 5 million people nationwide who have been bereaved, who haven't been able to be with their loved ones in those final hours, days, or even weeks. Behind the statistics, and whatever the cause, too many lives have been cut short, and every death has been devastating for the people left behind. So in a few minutes, we will be joining together, councillors, to respect the nation's minute of silence. But first, I'd like to bring in the leader, Councillor Julian German, to say a few words about Cornwall in the pandemic. Julian.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, for asking me to speak on behalf of the Council, following on from your reflections and those of Reverend Stephen Wild. On behalf of us all, our sincere condolences for all of those that have died in Cornwall, loved ones, friends, family members. 254 deaths at the end of December 2020, 556 deaths at the 21st of March, around 1 in 1,000 in our communities. These are all members of our communities, and we feel the pain of those that love them. We reflect on the wider impacts of the pandemic, those who have suffered in different ways, who were unable to say goodbye, or who missed family events, or have been not been able to be with their loved ones because of their work through the pandemic, who have been impacted in different ways, financial or through their mental health. The impacts have been wide-ranging. The council has been a force for good, and it's been a reminder of that, if one were needed, that we can be agile and responsive. A year ago, we weren't on online meetings, but throughout we have kept democracy going. Thanks to our public health team, but to all of the officers across the council, it has truly been a team effort, from Cornwall Fire and Rescue driving ambulances to Cornwall Housing delivering PPE, and many, many more examples. A sincere thanks to all of our partners, to our voluntary and community sector, formal and informal. The strength of Cornwall has always been one and all. We knew this, but it has absolutely been apparent throughout the pandemic. The pandemic has been difficult for us all in many different ways, but it has also been inspirational, seeing how we, councillors, staff, residents, community groups, volunteers, businesses, have pulled together to support one and all through such turbulent times. I know that we will keep working together to get us through the pandemic as it continues throughout this year. And on behalf of all of us, I welcome this opportunity to join in a moment of reflection and to come together in the hope for a brighter future. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Leader. So, behind the statistics, and whatever the cause, too many lives have been cut short. We remember all those who have lost friends and lost relatives over the past year, whatever the cause. And we remember all those impacted by the pandemic. A minute's silence, please, councillors. Thank you, councillors. And tonight at 8 o'clock, people are being encouraged to stand on their doorsteps with your phones, with candles, with torches, and we will all join together to signify a beacon of remembrance. Thank you. So we're moving on to item agenda number 12, which are questions from members to members of the Cabinet. Members will be aware that the Council agreed that a period of 60 minutes be allocated for questions from members to the Cabinet. Members are not required to give advance notice of their questions. Please put an X in the box if you have a question you wish to ask so that my Vice Chairman can make a note of your names. Each member, please, if you could identify which Cabinet member your question is for, and you will be able to ask one supplementary question based on your original question or the response. Questions, please, councillors, should relate to the duties of the Council and the specific remits of Cabinet portfolios. I would also ask that questions and responses are kept as brief as possible so that as many members as possible have the opportunity to ask their questions. Members can only put a second question if all members who wish to have had the opportunity to put their first question. I would also appreciate it if, as far as possible, members could refrain from asking parochial questions, as these can be dealt with more appropriately outside of the meeting. Any questions that cannot be dealt with during the 60 minutes can, of course, be raised with a Cabinet member outside of the meeting. So I've seen lots of X's going into that sidebar. Councillor May, the Vice Chairman, if you could advise us of the first 5, please, that would be good.
Thank you, Chairman. Olivia, Kirkham and Jenkin did all indicate or have a cross in the box, but I'm assuming that was before we went into our minute silence. So just parking those names. So I'm starting with Giles, Dyer, Jenkin, Thomas and Alvey. And then I have 3 more. So that's Giles, Dyer, Jenkin, Thomas and Alvey.
Thank you. And so councillors Olivier, Kirkham and Jenkin, if you do wish to raise a question, if you could put an X in the box and we will come to you in order. So Councillor Giles first, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My question is for Councillor Mitchell, which will be no surprise, I suspect. Rental properties are now charging astronomical rents, causing a real problem for local families, many of whom are actually in work and also in distress. I have a message here this morning that somebody is looking for properties and they're moving down from up the north, they say. And somebody said Cornwall is currently having a rental housing crisis with up to 70 people viewing each property. If you're able to pay over the odds, it helps. We've just paid £9,000 for 6 months rental up front for a 3-bedroom bungalow. Now, a lot of local people cannot do this. Can I ask Councillor Mitchell, locals are being priced out of the rental market now as well. If they can't get social housing, which is also oversubscribed, where on earth are they to turn, especially as all our hotels will be full of tourists shortly?
Thank you, Councillor Giles. Councillor Mitchell, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you to Councillor Giles for the question. Yes, it is absolutely horrific here in Cornwall at the moment in the housing market. You're absolutely right. People, I think after a year of lockdown and the pandemic, are reassessing their lives, how they wish to live them, and more importantly, where they wish to live them. I think Cornwall Council has been excellent in the way that we have helped homeless people here in Cornwall during the last 12 months, but the challenge facing us ahead, I think, could even be greater. Market forces, unfortunately, are dictating that. There's absolutely no way I see this government or any government saying we're going to stop people moving around the UK. UK citizens will not be prevented, and we will see exactly what Councillor Giles described happening. What we can do locally is to address that by increasing housing delivery, speeding it up. But we all know there are a number of
local residents here in Cornwall who believe we're already building too many houses. So that needs to be taken into consideration, whether we can
30 seconds.
whether we can bring this and raise it with the government, saying that we need more cash to address it and buy more houses that are already built from the estate agents and secure those for local families is one thing that we do need to look at and we are considering. But at the moment, market forces are dictating what happens, and it is difficult for anybody to compete and actually address those. It is at our forefront of what we're trying to come up with. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Giles, do you have a supplementary?
Just really the fact that, you know, we are sitting on a lot of empty houses in Cornwall that could be brought back into the stock. And I think that maybe building more houses is not the answer, because a lot of local people still can't afford them. So it needs to be looked at and brought the houses in that are already built to a spec what they can use, rather than to just keep building so that we're attracting more and more people down here.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell, did you wish to come back on that at all?
Well, no, I would most certainly agree. Many people have spoken about the need to have the change of use for properties that are already built going into holiday lets or whatever to be a planning issue. We could certainly revisit that, but at the moment there is no, what I've seen, intention for the government to make that a planning issue. So again, it is really difficult to combat against market forces. You know, we've all heard this week, it's been on all the media outlets, that Cornwall on search engines, buying a house in Cornwall is actually topping buying a house in London for a search. And that does really change things here in Cornwall, and we will champion and do all we can to make sure that local families aren't entirely pushed to one side. But you know, money talks. We all know that, and at the moment, people coming down here, St Ives certainly has a number of people who are here who shouldn't be here. I'm sure that's the same for many other places. We're going to have one of the busiest holiday seasons. That's going to have its own inherent problems, and what happens after this summer is you'll probably have even more people wanting to move here. So Cornwall Council will need to consider things that other areas aren't, and also things that we've never considered doing here before. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Dyer, who is your question for, please?
Thank you, ma'am. I don't know how that got there. I haven't requested any question. My question is a parochial one anyway, that I can deal with the housing department. So thank you. Sorry if I've caused confusion.
Not at all.
Intention.
It was nice to hear you. Councillor Rule then, please. I think Councillor Rule, and then Councillor Jenkin and Councillor Mike Thomas.
Sorry, Chairman, that took me by surprise.
Sorry.
It's fine. I hadn't realised I was next on the list. Yes, thank you very much. Mine's a question for Councillor Mitchell as well, please, if I may. Start off, I would like to congratulate you and your team, and to ask how many homes have we actually delivered now? That's bringing it back into use, and the new ones that you've built. I understand we've passed the 1,000 target that you set, which is brilliant, but of course there's more work needs to be done. And could you tell me what is planned next, please, as regards to continuing this work to provide accommodation for those that are still in need? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell, if I could call you back in, please.
Thank you, Hilary, and thank you to Councillor Rule for the question. So it is absolutely fantastic, but when you're looking at targets that have been met, that's always historical and looking backwards, and we also need to look at what is happening in the future. We have delivered the amazing outcome of 1,000 homes, which was a top priority for the council 4 years ago. We've also really brought down the amount of empty properties and the percentage of the housing stock here in Cornwall that has been empty. We've gone from being way above the national average to being at the national average, and over 400 properties have been brought back in. I have huge concerns. The government has now removed the link of councils to actually spend all the money from right to buy sales being ring fenced to go back into providing replacement properties. That is something that will really need to be reversed. We have come up with the plan that we are going to deliver 1,700 council houses set at social rents over the period up to 2028. I think that is hugely significant, and if we're really going to tackle the problems of what Cornwall needs and what the council should be delivering, I think it must be for all of us in Cornwall Council and Cornwall to campaign for the government to devolve the powers of housing along with planning to Cornwall rather than being controlled from Westminster. So it is brilliant news, but there is, as we've already discussed, lots to be done, and we are addressing it here in Cornwall. And I think it will be a huge challenge that hopefully the independents will be involved with delivering with whoever the other parties have delivered as members of Cornwall to make sure we do what Cornwall needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rule, do you have a supplementary for that?
Not a supplementary question, really, just to say thank you for the reassurance, and whoever is in that role, in your role going forward, I wish them all power to their elbow, and if I'm lucky enough to be back, I will support that work going forward. It's always been my ambition to provide proper homes for our local people. Thank you very much, though.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rule. Apologies, I think I might have mixed up the order with which Councillor May told me that people were going to speak in, but I looked on the sidebar, and on my sidebar, Councillor Jenkin came up next, and then after Councillor Jenkin will be Councillor Mike Thomas. So Councillor Jenkin.
Thank you, Chair. My question's for the leader, I think it would be for the leader. Pursuant to the fact that the motion to council has been referred to cabinet, I just wanted some assurance that the motion on supporting Cornwall shellfish industries is going to be dealt with in a timely manner, but particularly with the election period on. This is something that needs to be addressed urgently, and I just like assurance that the cabinet will address this urgently.
Thank you. Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Jenkin, for your question. So there was communication with members last week. Happy to send that back around on some of the actions that we've already taken. So I hope members will see that against that motion, we've already carried out a number of the actions requested, but certainly it's my intention that we respond to this as quickly as possible, and certainly my hope is that is before the elections. Thank you very much.
Loveday, did you wish to come back?
Yeah, just a supplementary to thank the leader for this, and to thank the cabinet for taking it seriously. As somebody who has worked within the water quality, for instance, for a long time, I am concerned that we still haven't managed to get the fowl to an appropriate water quality standard, and I think that probably there needs to be some strategic look at that, not just for the fowl but for other areas as well into the future. So I hope the cabinet will set in place a programme for the new council to consider in order to address some of those issues.
Leader, did you wish to respond?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Jenkin, and the others that have raised these critical issues around this catchment in particular, but also more broadly, and absolutely look forward to setting that in place for the next council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have Councillor Mike Thomas next, please. Hello, Mike.
Hello there, Hilary. Thank you ever so much for the way you've chaired these meetings. and a ray of sunshine over the last year. Thank you very much for being there. Certainly wanted to point that out before I ask my question. I think it's for Councillor Tim Dwelly. Councillor Dwelly, the revitalisation of our high streets, we're very pleased that that fund has at last come out, and there are many towns who are obviously very pleased with it. Can you comment on how that rollout has gone? And I do have a sort of serious supplementary to ask as well. So if you could just comment how it's gone.
Tim?
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. And yes, I think it's one of the more exciting developments for Cornwall Council that we've really geared up for town vitality. Something I was pushing for many years, and so have many colleagues. And it's also a good example of how cross-party councillor panels can influence policy making, because, as you may know, we have a £4 million pot in economic development to help town vitality, and that literally was a recommendation of a panel with councillors from all parties that proposed this, and it fits very well with the ways funding have changed post-Brexit, because of course EU funding tended not to be available for retail areas, so we are able to move towards some different ways of doing things in town centres. We also have the huge challenge not only of COVID, which hugely affects our town centres. We have over 20 significant towns in Cornwall, but also the ongoing, actually international decline in traditional retail. So these are big challenges for Cornwall. There is now a dedicated team of 3 people doing place shaping within that part of the council, and they've been working very hard and have already made awards of funding up to around 100,000, varying in amounts to towns including yours in Helston. I know Tor Point have also benefited, and I know there's a number of other towns on the cusp of having a decision made. My intention, if I were to continue in this role, is to roll that out to quite a few of the towns that want to do this, that didn't get the government's special help through the town deals. So if you add the town deals, the 4 towns that got that to the others, we're starting to rack up a significant proportion of our 20+ towns getting help, and hopefully being able to use their plans to revitalise their high streets, their town centres, with more housing in the town centre, so people use the shops and services, and also lots of other exciting projects ranging from electric bike provision all the way through to a complete rethink on how certain buildings are used. I hope that's helpful. Thank you.
Yes, if I could come back with my supplementary. My only concern is managing expectation, because clearly you can't do a great deal with 100,000, although it's very nice to have that. It's managing the expectation of residents of where we go next. So I'm just hopeful that in all the towns, not just Helston, but obviously I'm representing Helston. I'm very keen for Helston to thrive. But will there be access, do you feel, to other funding streams, and will officers be able to help those towns actually identify those funding streams? Because it's all very well doing the planning and scoping for the future. It's actually getting those projects built is going to make a real difference to towns like Helston.
So yes, Mike, my answer to that is it's a slog, but the towns that have teams of people, not just councillors, but chambers and bids and community groups and others coming together, working on things, you can do this. It may take some time. I know from my experience in Penzance, it's taken us many years to get to where we are now, where we're hopefully on the brink of up to 25 million from Town Deal. We've already got 10.4 million from the Future High Streets Fund. And I know that other towns can learn the lessons of what those of us who've been through this have learned in terms of what not to do as well as what to do. But in terms of sources of the bigger money to do stuff, don't rule out what we can do in getting the private sector to come forward and do things it wouldn't do without, for example, a study done into the viability of a scheme, design work, that kind of thing. We've got Cornwall's investment programme, which is up to £600 million of low interest rate borrowing, which can be used through our company Treveth. And they are definitely involved in this, for example, up in Tor Point. And we also have, of course, potentially some of the funds coming from government through the Shared Prosperity Fund, which we know has already mentioned town vitality. And these are just some examples. and we have Cornwall Council's capital programme, which can be used to, if you like, bring in some of those other funds. So a cocktail of funds is available. No, it's not quick, it's not easy, but you do get rewards for this, and we're totally dedicated to helping all these towns across Cornwall to make the most of this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer, and thank you for what you've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor May, I think the next 5 are Councillors Alvey, Jordan, Kirkham, Fairman and Wood. Does that concur with what you have?
It does, Chairman. There are 14 speakers in all. Those are the first 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor May. So Councillors Alvey, then Jordan, Kirkham, Fairman and Wood. Councillor Alvey first, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. My question is for Councillor Nolan. I wonder if Councillor Nolan could give an update on progress with the rollout of the new waste collection and street cleansing contract, and also perhaps if you could comment on if he's received any feedback around the suitability of the new vehicle fleet, shiny new vehicles that we've seen around the bazaars of late. But I have had some feedback that some of the vehicles are slightly larger than the outgoing vehicles, and they're proving a bit of a problem, particularly in some of the very rural and tight areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, Councillor Alvey, for your question and your continued interest in the rollout of the waste contract. I've seen several threads of correspondence with you on that. The start of the new contract has gone very well. We don't have any concerns about the suitability of the fleet. We have flexibility with a variety of size vehicles from 26 tonne to 3.5 tonne, but some of the 7.5 tonne curbside recycling vehicles have been delayed by COVID. We expect them to be delivered in the summer, but we've still got the old vehicles, so we're still carrying on with some of them. The very small, narrow access vehicles have only just been delivered, again, small delays, and we're pushing those out so we can get into the narrow places. So we're quite confident that we have the flexibility, and by the summer we'll have everything we want in terms of new vehicles, but we still have the old ones to fill in where we're not. And there are 1 or 2 places where we will need to be serviced with even smaller vehicles, but we know where they are, and we have made the arrangements.
Councillor Alvey.
So, thank you, and a quick supplementary, and clearly we've seen, as a result partly of COVID, the big delays at the household waste recycling centres of late, and I appreciate that the council has done its best through social media to minimise that impact. But as a result of that, are we perhaps regretting the decision to remove those recycling centres or bins from public car parks that were previously funded on the old contract?
Thank you for the supplementary. We have had long queues, and as things have improved, we're beginning to open more bays. So we're getting more people through, and they're going to be open a little bit longer in April, open until 6 o'clock, 1 night per week, as you'll know from the work you did at NOSC. That's what people want. That's what they wanted to do. As the recycling banks, no, they were a hangover from the district council, and most of the time, most of the things they take, you just now put out with your curbside recycling. So there's no need. What we found was that they were abused by local businesses and by commercial organisations who didn't want to pay for their commercial waste to be taken away, and preferred to have Cornwall Council take it away for free. And many places have been quite pleased to see the back of them, because for some reason they attract antisocial behaviour and fly tipping. And you see supermarkets getting rid of them because they don't want a pile of rubbish around their place either. It can all be done curbside now, so there was no need for them.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nolan. So moving on to Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is a question to the leader. At a Cornwall NHS Trust meeting last week, it was reported that £1.8 million had been received by the Trust. This was money that's been outstanding for a long time. Could we be assured that all monies owed to the NHS Trust have been paid and there is nothing in dispute? Surely paying the NHS was far more important than paying 15 to 20 million for consultants And can we be assured that nothing like this will happen in future?
Leader, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's not a question for myself. I don't know the detail, but it could well be Councillor Rochell as the portfolio holder for adult social care, or the deputy leader as resources cabinet member.
Councillor Rochell
can answer.
Thank you, Councillor Rochell.
Yeah, thank you. So the grants that were sent down the line with regard to COVID-19, some went to the CCG, and then we put a bid in to the CCG for funding some of the services that we've been providing. This is just one example of how it's worked. And those we're trying to work out agreement on what constitutes a legitimate demand against those funds or not, and we would have to finance those ourselves. So that there are two long-standing issues currently with the CCG that we're working on, but there's a commitment between the CCG and ourselves that they will be resolved within this financial year.
Well, I think that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jordan. Thank you, Councillor Rochell. So moving on then, Councillor Kirkham, and then after Councillor Kirkham will be Councillor Fairman and then Councillor Wood. Jane.
Thanks very much, Hilary. My question is of Councillor Dwelly. It's a couple of things. I'm going to try and sneak in two in my 2 minutes. The first thing is a bit like Councillor Jenkin. I was really disappointed that PERDA was extended, and so my cross-party across 4 groups motion couldn't be heard. Now, a lot of what I suggested in that motion was covered in Councillor Dwelly's press release on Thursday. There are a couple of things I just wanted to check that were going to be covered that I couldn't tell were in that press release. One was about the thing that Loveday mentioned about the water purity issue and whether we would be looking into that further and trying to do something about it in the file particularly. And the other thing was about rent holidays for tenants who have shellfish concerns. The intention of my motion obviously was to bind the council, so it had to do something about this. And because I haven't been able to bring that motion, then I haven't been able to bind the council. So I have to kind of rely upon you doing what you said you would in your press release and in this answer. The other question, just very quickly, really pleased about the Vitality of High Streets Fund. Falmouth have applied. We understand there's a delay until the end of April until our decision, which is a bit of a shame. I was just going to ask about Council did promise at one stage to look at a list of empty properties on high streets and try and get names of owners and explore the issue of compulsory purchase orders as well. And I wondered if you'd taken that any further. Thanks.
Tim.
Thank you, Councillor Kirkham. I hope I'll be allowed a little bit of time because there's more than one question there. And yes, I completely support the idea of cross-party initiatives, because that's the way we get things through the council straightforwardly. And some of us, at least, take a cross-party view wherever possible when we can agree. In terms of the issue to hand on the fowl, yes, as you rightly say, the water purity is a problem there because it's rated B in terms of scallops and oysters, and that is an issue in terms of export. I can confirm that we're definitely looking at that, but as you know, Jane, we're in the middle of PERDA now, and there's limited amounts that can be done right this minute on this. I have to stress this, that the most important thing to help that particular part of the fishing industry is government action to help export through the problems with the paperwork. The paperwork which, of course, we knew was going to apply to non-EU countries, but strangely, we didn't seem to see much done about that. So we are lobbying George Eustace, who's the Secretary of State, on that subject. That hasn't stopped, that will continue, and we know that the sector itself wants to have work done on that. But water purity would help, but I don't think you could turn purity round on the fowl quickly enough to get the exports moving, so that's a long-term one, but we share your concern. Rent holidays, this is tricky because each and every one of the businesses we're talking about is in a different scenario. We can't sit here and I can't say to you today there's a great big rent holiday for everybody. We do know we have our part to play, but I refer back again to the main thing that needs to be done. Government needs to tackle the red tape issue and actually sort out the paperwork, and that probably involves spending money on having people who are vets and inspectors to test the quality of our exports, so that they can go to the other side ready, certified. But yes, we will do what we can on that, and there are key officers working on exactly that. It's a top priority for us. We do care a lot about what happens to these fishermen. If I can then go on to Anita, if you'll be kind enough to let me answer this one separately, on empty properties, please, and CPOs. My advice would be that although we do obviously track empty properties, Cornwall Council, it's a little known part of the planning system, team's work, that they do actually have regular reports on a lot of this stuff. However, the sort of detailed work you probably mean, Jane, is best done at a local level. It may be exactly what these high street vitality funds can help with, is getting someone to do an audit of exactly who owns some of these empty properties or underused properties, because we know from experience in towns like Penzance that it might be a family member, it might be someone from the Cayman Islands. You know, with that information you can do more. CPOs, I think this council needs to use CPO powers more. I think there's a tradition of not using CPO, which I think needs to be questioned, but that doesn't mean we're suddenly going to CPO hundreds of properties all in one go. But hopefully the next council, and I will finish here, we'll look seriously at where CPOs can play a part. Thank you.
Thanks. Jane?
Thanks very much, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both. And Councillor Fairman is next, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is for Councillor Nolan. The Home Secretary has recently stated that there is strong support for directly elected individuals offering stronger governance for fire and rescue services, with a white paper to consult on how to address co-terminosity challenges, including the Southwest. Do you see this as a concern, and is this the first step towards taking Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service away from the council and potentially into the hands of the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner?
Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, Councillor Fairman. I think we've discussed this before at full council. There was a motion 4 or 5 years ago we discussed this, and the council was resoundingly rejected the idea that we should merge with Devon or be taken over by the Police and Crime Commissioner. I don't know that that's changed. I think the council is still very proud of Cornwall Fire and Rescue and what they do for us and with us. There are many advantages to having fire and rescue with us during the pandemic. They were great, weren't they? They fetched PPE for us. They helped with inspections. They worked with social care and environmental health. And they did a lot of work with us. Right now, they're continuing with a project with adult social care on hoarding. I think the benefits of having them in Cornwall as part of Cornwall Council are evident, and the council went through it many years ago. If you look at
sorry,
what
Councillor
they did.
Nolan, I'm just going to bring in Councillor Taylor for a point of order.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to make a statement. We have been given clear instructions about the political nature of questions during this particular session. I would like to thank the Conservative group for adhering to those requests. I am disappointed at the political point scoring that does seem to be made during this question and previous questions, and I would ask that we all adhere to the monitoring officer's advice, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Please,
Chair, can I get,
yes, I'll bring you in, Councillor. You will,
yeah.
But I would, before you, I will certainly give you the right to reply, but I would just like to advise you, please be careful commenting on Conservative policy. Councillor Fairman.
Yeah, so I deliberately said the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner and not the Police and Crime Commissioner. So I'm speaking about the office, not the person. So there's nothing political in my question.
Thank you.
Oh, I'll restrict myself to saying that the Home Secretary has said that there will be a consultation. I I'm not aware that the council's views have changed. And having had discussions with the Police and Crime Commissioner, she hasn't shown any real indication of wanting to do this. She's quite happy with the way we're working together at the moment. I don't think that's political.
Dominic,
Yeah.
did you wish to supplementary?
Very briefly, is there anything we can do to make sure that this consultation is not lost to members as we move from one administration to the next?
No, well, I don't know that there's time now, but we certainly, once it comes, we will circulate it to members, because you are all you are the fire authority, all 123 members, so you need to be involved.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My question, to keep Tim on his toes, is to Councillor Tim Dwelly. Here in Mid Cornwall, we're really excited about the discoveries of commercially recoverable amounts of lithium. What efforts are being made to ensure that much of this wealth remains in Cornwall, creating much needed employment and prosperity and prospects for future generations? Can you also reassure me that this newfound wealth will help Cornwall prosper, especially Mid Cornwall, and it's not forgotten in its rush to help the towns? Some of it will remain with us here in the larger villages, which we feel are being neglected in favour of the towns. We're losing and will have lost our PCSOs, our post offices, our village stores, our pubs. We've no dental provision, our medical centres are overcrowded, our schools are full, and the large villages in Mid Cornwall are feeling neglected. I sincerely hope that this newfound wealth will be used, some of it will be used to help Mid Cornwall. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Wood. I think you're making 2 points there, and I'll just very quickly remind you and other members that we have agreed a budget potentially for rural village vitality, if you will, which is the same level as that directly available to towns. So it's something we're completely committed to. This authority, if it remains in the same administration, will continue to push out exactly the sort of thing you're talking about. But to focus on lithium, very exciting. And speaking as a former mineral collector myself, and knowing mines well in Cornwall from many, many years ago, it's exciting to see the possibilities. But if I could put it in the context that lithium is only one of the things that can be done, there's a combination of work being made possible through combining geothermal exploration with the brines that contain the lithium, and also there are other precious minerals such as tungsten, which are also relevant. What we call geo resources is one of the 5 priority sectors in our local industrial strategy. So what you're saying there, John, is this important to us? Yes, it's absolutely a top priority, and we are looking for raw materials being used in battery production. So Cornwall is actually engaged with the Department of International Trade to propose potential sites for a UK gigafactory, and the idea of that is to deliver the shortest possible, what some are calling mine to wheel solution for using lithium and other precious metals and minerals to get into the world of electric car battery production. So we think Cornwall has a huge potential. I won't go all through all the areas, except that my final point would be to say that the lithium company has 300 kilometres of rights to pursue this material, and there are over 3,000 students at Camborne School of Mines and similar working in this sector. So we're geared up. Thanks.
That's very reassuring. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wood. So I think we're moving on to the next block of 5, which Councillor May, I think, are Councillors Burden, Monk, Rand, McClelling and Olivier.
Yes, that's right, Chairman.
Excellent. Thank you. So Councillor Burden.
Yes, Madam Chairman, my question is for Councillor Hawken, but firstly, can I say that we do thank you for your great skill in chairing these virtual meetings.
Thank you.
I mean, you've been extremely fair and very gracious with it, and I do admire you for how you keep it up, as it were.
Thank you.
To Councillor Hawken, Sally, it is acknowledged that the Cabinet position for children and young people is the biggest role of all. And added to that, of course, in the last 12 months, you've had public health and that pandemic, which has made the job into 24/7, and I have admired you how stoically you've hung in there, because I don't think everybody would have been able to do that. But my question is, what will your notes say to your successor?
Sally.
Oh, that's a good question. I think what I've said at, and I think it's interesting that I've said it at both children's scrutiny and health scrutiny, is actually the emotional well-being of young people needs to be something people keep front and centre. I think it's going to be important as we go forward.
Yes.
I sincerely hope the next council do think about that very, very seriously.
Yeah. And whoever takes on the role, I mean, must realise the huge role it is, and how, you know, it's just massive, really, because there's all sorts of facets in there: fostering and adoption and education, and mental health and children in care, and it just goes on and on and on, and it takes all your time and a bit more. Anyway, thank you ever so much for what you've done.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Sally, before you turn your camera off, I was really saddened to hear that you're not going to be standing again, and thank you really for all you've done.
Thank you, Hilary.
So, Councillor Monk, I believe, is next.
Jim Flashman, I've got a question, please.
Grant, I'll add you to the list, Jim. Sorry, Oliver.
That's okay. It's a question for Councillor Brown regarding the Saints Trail. I'd just like to ask him how many contracts with landowners have actually been signed and legally binding. And I don't mean a memorandum of understanding, I mean land purchases. How many have actually gone through as of this date? And as a second question, how can they be so certain of the project coming in on cost when the strategic director at the beginning of the month said in an email, project team are carrying out an in-depth analysis of the costs at present. We'll have that finalised and reported upon by the end of this month, which doesn't sound like a fully costed plan that we've been assured is already in place. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Monk, for your question. As Councillor Harris knows, because I communicated with him only a couple of weeks ago, we've got 16 heads of terms agreements with landowners out of a total of 43. That's for the entire routes of the Saints Trail. Heads of terms are not contractually binding, but it's the next step along the route. Clearly, all land negotiations have been incredibly difficult in the last 12 months because it's very difficult to agree and to negotiate land transfers with in a virtual situation. You need to be face to face. We are working hard to get the rest of them over the line as soon as possible. But at the audit committee, both myself and the strategic director were very clear that we will deliver on time and on budget. Highways England have accepted the challenges of the land negotiations and the setback with COVID-19 and have agreed that the deadline for completion of the funding now will be 2023 and not 2022. And I'm confident we will deliver that. And if necessary, the strategic director will make adjustments to the scheme to make sure that it comes in on budget.
Councillor Monk, did you have a supplementary comment?
I did, yes. So it's just good to be clear that we still haven't signed any actual legally binding contracts as of yet, and it sounds like that there's a bit of clarification on when he says that the strategic director will make any necessary adjustments. They sound like cuts to the potential route. Can you just clarify that comment? Thank you.
Jeff.
Yes, thank you. Any adjustments? We're not anticipating having to make adjustments, but we will look at the scheme, and where we can pare down the costs, we will clearly do that. But at the moment, we don't anticipate needing to make any adjustments. The scheme should be able to be delivered on time, on cost, and I'm confident we will do that. We've additionally, as you know, invested £700,000 outside of the scheme from the transport budget to complete work on the Waterworld car park at Newquay, which is one end of the Saints Trail from Newquay to Perranporth. That work is ongoing as we speak, that it currently is being covered off by Highways England.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you, Councillor Brown, for answering the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rand is up next, please.
Thank you. And can I thank you, and can I say, Hilary, well done for your chairing. It's been amazing. Thank you. My question is for Tim Dwelly, and it's regarding European funding and what follows. Tim, I've been involved with the European funding at local level since 2007-2008 with the West Cornwall Local Action Group. You know, the grants have been designed to support Cornwall because it sits in the bottom 10% of deprivation in Northern Europe. We've had convergence, which brought, you know, roughly £6 million into Cornwall. 2.1 of that went into the west, which was good. That was followed by LEADER, another rural development programme for England, dealt with by, you know, through DEFRA. Another 6 million, of which 1.5 roughly went to West Cornwall, so again be involved in that. Community-led local development is the latest programme we're working on. That's 11.6 million, of which 3 million is roughly is coming to the west. So these programmes have been extremely important. They support local communities, they support businesses, they create jobs. That's what it's all about. So my question is, what's going to happen when that money runs, when those programs cease? I mean, CLLD will be ceasing in 2023. What happens? You know, what's going to replace
30 seconds. Thank you, Councillor Rand. Thank you, Chair. I'm afraid the simple answer is we don't yet know in terms of that level of detail, Julian. Whether there will be a very similar programme to the community-led local development or the LEADER programmes, for example. As you will know, we have for many years argued that we should have as much local control over what we do with these monies, whether they come from the EU or from central government. You know, I don't think we're hung up on that. We just want to get the investment we need, and we want to use it to the best effect. The problem I think we face in the short run is that now Brexit is done, we are, if you like, coming to the end of that type of funding. And as you will all know, from April this year, we're no longer eligible for those £100 million or so that we would have got. Very disappointing is the announcement of only £3 million for the pilot first year of the Shared Prosperity Fund. And I don't think it's too hard to tell that 3 million is a lot less than 100 million, which was what the Prime Minister said we would get. Now, hopefully, after that first year of what appears to be an extremely low level of funding, things will become clearer and your questions will be answered. But I have to say my own calculation on what might be the high watermark of Shared Prosperity Fund based on 3.8% of the UK structural funds, which is what Cornwall used to get from the EU funding, we would be looking
Sorry, Councillor Dwelly, I can just see there's a point of order that's come in from Councillor Harris.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Chair, and I see the monitoring officer already put herself up here. This is getting very political. We're in Perda. We're getting very near to it all through some of the questions here. I think this is out of order. I'll leave it to the monitoring officer to comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mel, if I could bring you in, please.
Yes, certainly. So apologies, Councillor Dwelly. I did turn my camera on. I understand that you have views and opinions on what are kind of conservative policies, but if I can ask that you keep your speech factual, and to be fair, I think you did for the bulk of it. It was just when I turned my camera on that I felt it was appropriate to do so. So if you continue along those lines, I would be grateful. Thank you.
Not a problem at all. I'm merely telling everyone 3 million, not 100 million, is the amount of money we will get from the pilot Shared Prosperity Fund. That is a fact. And going forward beyond that, when we hope to get more money, and this will be about everybody lobbying the government, whatever party they're from, and I know that MPs share that concern as well. So hopefully it's another example of what we should all be working towards. We want to get to the same, at least, as the 100 million we got before. And this was, after all, what we were told we would get So let's hope, all of us, that we do get that. Thank you.
Could I just come back, Chair, please? Just and Tim, you know, as I mentioned, these lag boards are made up mostly of volunteers, drawn from communities and businesses and other support groups. So I just would like to ask if you join me and I'm sure members in thanking them for all the voluntary time and efforts they do and to deliver those grants to the local communities across Cornwall. Thank you.
Thank you.
With great pleasure, because I know those people on those boards have done amazing things with what was always a fairly small part of the bigger picture money. There is absolutely no reason, Councillor Rand and anyone who's involved in any lag, that those structures couldn't continue. But I can't say they definitely will, because I don't think that's just down to us. We need to see more about what the Shared Prosperity Fund is about and what we're allowed to do in terms of Whitehall decisions or Cornwall decisions. But in principle, the experience of having these groups has been invaluable, and I hope in the future, and this is certainly nothing to do with Brexit or EU or any politics, I hope we'll have even more of these scales of projects funded as a bigger proportion of the future funds. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you, councillors both. And Steve Ellis, hello and welcome to this meeting. We've still got about another, I don't know, I think 20 minutes before we get on to the part where you're going to be speaking. So could I invite you please to turn off your camera until we get to that stage, if that's possible? Thank you. But thank you for, I'm glad you found the right link. So our next questioner is Councillor McLennan, please, and that will be followed. He will be followed by Councillor Olivier. Councillor McLennan, please.
Same compliments to you, Chair, for what you've been doing, and Mary as well. And it's nice to be come to the last day of school kind of feeling. But, it's been comments about working together, which I find it strange. It's taken 4 years for me to hear down here, you know, I think we should praise things that have happened that have helped Cornwall from up the road in London. Instead of keep slagging things off, and if once have a go at me for that statement, I don't slag any Labour or Liberal or anybody else off. My question is to Andrew Mitchell. Andrew and I have worked pretty close to you on Cornwall Housing, and I'd like to give a bit of praise to the 2 other councillors who've worked on that board, Councillor May and Councillor Gammon, Jackie Gammon. We have many discussions amongst ourselves. I find it still strange, and if I'm allowed to say this, Andrew, and you're in the dark a lot of times, what's happening at Cornwall Housing, I know, but many members don't know, I don't think. And the state it got to, I think the other 2 councillors have backed me up by saying I hided it many months running at board meetings. But it's still like it's more secret from, well, it's not secret as the Masons now, but it's so secret of what's going on. And I think, you know, it's not political, but it should be more made open that it's been a disaster.
30 seconds.
In many ways. In many ways, it's been a disaster. But I'd like to put on record for all members to hear that Libby Brayson, an officer there, has been outstanding contact to try and help us all. But there's huge problems there, and I don't see the end of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thanks to Mike for the question. I would also like to thank him, Councillor Mary May and Councillor Jackie Gammon for the work that they've put in as the representatives on Cornwall Housing Limited's board. It has been difficult times. There is a confidential review that's happened, that's been instigated by CoreServe and CHL after the council did raise concerns as to some areas of operations. Those 3 organisations now, CoreServe, Cornwall Housing Limited and the council, are going through the report. We are coming up with plans to address those concerns, and I think everybody is dedicated to ensuring that the residents, the 10,500 residents who live in the council's properties, that are managed by CHL get the best possible service, and we all want that. That is being brought up. It is a confidential report, as I said, from Corserve. I certainly believe that as the plan is worked up, it should certainly become public. All members of the council, all our tenants, and people in Cornwall should know that we are working to address issues which have been identified. I think also we need to acknowledge that the staff there and the management team, there's a new temporary CEO in place, and he's leading that plan to come up with the work that needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, can I advise we have about 10 minutes left of this 1 hour slot. So if you, yep, and you can come back certainly, Councillor McLean, but just to advise people to keep it as brief as possible, please.
I don't need Andrew to comment on this one, but I think definitely on the agenda, which I've discussed with Andrew and other officers, senior level, home choice, whoever takes over on May the 6th or 7th, home choice has got to be looked at. It's really from Dickens' days now, so it needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLean. Councillor Olivier, as brief as you possibly can, please.
I don't know why you're giving me special guidance in that direction, Chair. Right.
But think.
You know, my question is to the leader of the council. And first, can I say I would join the others in complimenting the way you chair meetings. I think, as well as being a model to other members of the council, you're a model to many parish council chairmen I've encountered in Cornwall. So go out and give them a bit of training. But my question to the leader refers back to he quoted at the beginning of the meeting the Institute for Public Policy Research report, the devolution for Cornwall. Now, and it referred to fiscal devolution. And the fiscal devolution, including the ability to tax second homes. So the Institute for Public Policy report has flagged up a devolved power to tax second homes. I'd like to know what the leader thinks about that proposal from the Institute of Public Policy Research. I think it's a really good idea, but what does he think?
Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Olivier, for your question. So I think that's a good idea. The current position is that the most that we can do for second homes is levy 100% council tax, and when we were given that ability, we took that some time ago. It would obviously be a policy decision for a full council in the future. It would be up to them to have that debate. But in terms of properties being left empty for a reasonable proportion of the years that year, and in terms of the housing crisis that we've heard of, a higher contribution to our communities through council tax seems a reasonable ask for those that can afford to have second homes. So that's my view, and as I said, it would be a policy decision for a future council. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Leader.
Thank you, and thank you for keeping it brief, Councillor Olivier. So the next, actually, I have 8 speakers left, and I'm not sure that we're going to get time for everybody. So these are the 8 speakers we have. If we don't manage to get everybody in, please remember that you are advised or welcome to contact your cabinet member outside of this meeting. So at the moment, Councillors French, Taylor, Elliott, Tudor, Desmond, Flashman, Ellenbrook and Harris. So Councillor French first.
Thank you, Chair. It's for Councillor Jeff Brown. On Sunday, I received a photograph from somebody who lives on Beach Road, Porth Pian, and it was showing cars parked all the way down the road as we had in the height of the summer. And it was a grey, cloudy day. And as she made the point, if it's this bad now, what is it going to be like in the summer? Could I suggest that he sets up a specific team at County Council Highways to work closely with all town councils and parish councils affected to look at what can be done? Because if we wait for the next administration to decide what money is available and how it is to be distributed, we're actually going to miss it for this summer, and this summer is going to be chaos anyway. So could I ask him to look at this idea and help Cornwall through the height of the summer? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor French, for your question. In terms of that particular road, I will ask officers to have a look, but I doubt there's very much we can do in time for this summer anyway, because I would suspect it would require a traffic regulation order, and with a fair wind, that's going to probably take 6 months to get through. But I will ask them to have a look, see if there is anything we can do under the COVID legislation for managing traffic movement. But the whole concept of actually trying to make local decision making on transport issues more efficient was the driver behind me introducing the community network highway scheme, so that community networks, which involve both town, parish and our Cornwall councillors, have the ability to identify issues such as this and have access to funding to address that. So I think that's probably the quickest route to do it, but I will ask officers to have a look at the PORT-P in particular.
Thank you.
Okay,
And
thank
the only
you.
point I would quickly make is we overcame it by making passing places on such roads, and that was through the use of bollards. Well, that can be done temporarily anywhere, but I still think it needs to be double yellow lines. And the fact we've got to wait for 6 months, which means it won't be ready till the following summer, is a problem.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. My point of order has been made, so I'm quite happy to go on to the next person asking the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question probably for Councillor Nolan or possibly Jeff, I don't know. With the growth in electric off-road bicycles, including those being rented out to people around this area, the likely designation, if it passes consultation, of the Penwith Moors as a triple SI, and the growth as people have decided they want more time leisure using dirt bikes and 4x4s on the Penwith Moors, we're seeing a lot of damage. Is it time that we have designated trails for off-road vehicles, such as green lanes that they might have up country, or how are we going to protect the moors if we don't have designated trails? Thank you.
Thank you. I wonder if this is leader, probably Jeff. Let's try Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you. It's not something that we specifically considered in terms of off-road trails, although the work that we've been doing in terms of Bay to Bay, the Lou Valley, the Saints Trails, they're all effectively off-road trails because they're trails that are designed for walking, cycling and horse riding. So there is the opportunity there where we're creating lots of opportunities for off-road cycling. We haven't looked specifically at off-road sort of hard trails for people who want to enjoy that as a sport.
And a follow-up, Councillor Elliott?
Yeah, just quickly. I mean, the Bay to Bay is a hard concrete track. People are wanting to go and tear up on their either dirt bikes or up to 1,000-watt e-bikes, which are nearly as powerful as the dirt bikes, and they are going across the moors, causing a lot of damage. And when you challenge them, they say, well, if you don't want us to ride here, give us somewhere else. They don't want a formal posh hard trail. What they want is a dirt track where they're allowed to use it, and if we don't provide it, then the result is, as we're seeing up in Madron area particularly, the moors are being wrecked, and these are important landscapes.
Okay, thank you. So, councillors, that is the full 60 minutes is now passed. I'm willing to allow one more question from Councillor Tudor as the next on the list, but then all those afterwards, I'm afraid we're going to ask you to contact the individual cabinet member outside of this meeting. So, Councillor Tudor, for the final question, please. Your connection is quite slow, Councillor Tudor.
Sorry, it's taking a long time for the buttons to work at this end. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's better.
My question is for Councillor Hannaford, portfolio holder for climate change.
We see that Cornwall Council's carbon neutral action plan, we are working our way towards Cornwall being carbon neutral by 2030. I wanted to ask, how realistic an aim is that? Will Cornwall be carbon neutral by 2030?
Councillor Hanford.
Thank you, Councillor Tudor. Yeah, great question. I think the best we can say that we can strive to be carbon neutral by 2030. I personally think there's a higher chance that the council will be carbon neutral, net carbon neutral by 2030, and we certainly have a route map to achieve that. As far as the rest of Cornwall, the council can achieve through influence, through policy, through investment. But if you recall back in January 2019, the original motion said this council calls on government to provide the resources and the powers to be able to take action. So there's some things that we can take control over and make a difference. But I think there needs to be national changes and national government initiatives to help us. So my cup is always half full, Councillor Tudor. You have to have hope. There's certainly a lot of people within our communities that are really working hard to achieve that. And we all have to play our part in making that happen. So I think I'd use the word strive to, but I think the council is much better placed to achieve that.
Councillor Tudor, follow up.
Thank you. I just thought, what will happen if the council, the Cornwall Council, is not carbon neutral by 2030?
Well, temperature rises. Thank you for your supplementary. So
I mean, in terms of responsibility, I mean, will we review our, will there be an opportunity in the next council to review what we're doing if we're not on track?
Absolutely, we're already reviewing that now, and the problem is that many of the metrics that we use have a very long lead-in time, so that we've already reduced our carbon footprint because we've decarbonised our energy production by about 19% over the last 5 years. But I'm not saying that the council can take credit for that. But certainly the £30 million pot that council have approved today to create more renewable energy will help towards that. So we can only do what we can do, but we need people like yourself, and we need people out there in the community of Cornwall to also play their part, whether that's a school, a business, or in the community. But it's under constant review. We are monitoring it all the time, and as I say, in the new administration, I hope whoever it is will carry on with the good work. Cornwall is seen as exemplars for this work, and over the next 2 days I'm presenting nationally because people are interested what Cornwall are doing, because they think we're pretty good at this, but I'm not resting on laurels. There's still a lot to do, but we can't do that on our own.
Thank you.
Thank you both councillors, and I'm sorry to the councillors Desmond, Flashman, Ellenbrook and Harris that we didn't have time, but we have gone over 5 minutes over the allocated time, so please do direct your questions outside of this meeting offline to the cabinet members that you wish to have respond. And actually, I think it was quite fitting in some ways that the last question for this session focused around climate emergency, and Edwina's message of hope there for the future. Climate emergency is going to be one of our biggest challenges going forward. So thank you all cabinet members for your good clear answers, and we're going to move into the very final section of this meeting today, which is the closing remarks, and these are, colleagues, my closing remarks for the last scheduled meeting of full council in this administration. So first off, as you're aware, I chose St Petrock's as my chairman's charity. St Petrock's is an inspirational Cornish charity devoted to ending street homelessness in Cornwall. And I would really like to thank councillors and Cornwall Council staff really you've taken St Petrock's to heart, and you've worked to raise its profile as well as to raise funds. And today, colleagues, it's a particular honour to be able to welcome the redoubtable Steve Ellis to the meeting to join us. I wonder if you could turn on your camera, please, Steve. Steve is the inspirational Chief Executive of St Petrock's. Welcome, Steve. And perhaps you could just spare us a few minutes to reflect on the work of St Petrock's. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. And in particular, can I express my own gratitude to Councillor Frank, who's been so supportive of the work of St Petrock's. As she mentioned, we have been her Charity of the Year, and it's been a huge honour and privilege for everybody associated with the charity. So I will take the opportunity right now to thank her and indeed everybody at Cornwall Council for being so supportive of us. I don't underestimate the words honour and privilege. It means so much to all of us. Just a couple of quick comments, if I may, particularly about the last 12 months. Today is the day of national reflection, as it's 12 months ago that as a nation we entered our first lockdown. Individually, we will all have our memories of the impact the COVID crisis has had upon our lives. And professionally, I'm convinced that this is a period none of us will ever forget. St Petrock's celebrates its 35th anniversary this year, and more than ever we recognise that being homeless brings many challenges with it. But being homeless in a pandemic adds a whole new layer of difficulties, not just for the individuals concerned, but also for all of the service providers across the county and indeed nationally. So as council members, you'll be aware of the pressures and tensions that have been experienced these last 12 months. Delivering services across a range of sectors, we've all had to work our way through 3 lockdowns and operate within all the government regulations. This is to continue to provide high quality services in the greatest and safest of circumstances. At St Petrock's, the key decision a year ago was to keep all the services open and operational. It was to insist upon all the protocols being observed, not only by the staff, but also by the clients. This was a non-negotiable position from the outset. And I can report that compliance from all concerned has, I believe, contributed to only 1 positive case of COVID-19 across our services this last year. The advice we've been given by Public Health, the NHS and Adult Social Care to provide a background and understanding of regulation and the implications of the changes of policy and legislation have been absolutely crucial. Without this guidance, we would not have been able to function over the last 12 months. The support the charity has received throughout this period has been humbling and energising, and as a consequence, I can let you know that to today we've been able to provide positive housing solutions for 424 people in the last 12 months. And our traditional winter night shelter would not meet the COVID-19 guidelines. As a consequence, a new system of dispersed service using Cornish hotels and bed and breakfasts has enabled us to provide 887 nights of accommodation for 40 clients. This has happened over the most difficult period of time from a weather point of view and all the associated difficulties for what we believe has been the most difficult lockdown, Lockdown 3. The service has been so successful, it's been extended beyond its original closure date of the 28th of February and is still in operation as we speak. It's our intention to take it on until Easter. So as a charity and a service provider, we could not deliver these services without support. And we are the living proof of the remarkable kindness of the Cornish community, both professionally and personally. The goodwill towards St Petrock's sustains us, and I can report to you today that morale across the charity remains high because of that investment. There are many challenges ahead of all of us, and as we look to deliver services for the continuation of the pandemic and beyond, we all need to ensure we remain safe, as do our clients, colleagues, families and friends. We're mindful how difficult these 12 months have been, but we're realistic that the route out of the pandemic will require continued diligence, complete commitment and an ability to find solutions to any of the difficulties our citizens may face. The hard work will be continued, I do not believe there will be any respite for any of your public officials on the horizon. We appreciate it, members, you're now preparing for elections. So, can at St Petrock's we take the opportunity to wish you well, good luck in your preparations in the weeks ahead. Your skills, wisdom, talents will all be tested to the full as we all look to find a better future for Cornwall. St Petrock's commitment is undimmed. We will continue to deliver our services as best as we are able to, as long as they are required. So on behalf of our trustees, our supporters, volunteers, staff, but especially all of our clients, a sincere and heartfelt thank you to you all for being supportive, and a sincere thank you for listening to me today. Thank you all.
Thank you, Steve. We really have been humbled by your work, and it has been an utter joy to work with all your team. So please pass on our best wishes to them as you work to end street homelessness in Cornwall. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So colleagues, Steve is a recipient of a Cornwall Civic Award. This is the highest award that Cornwall Council can confer, and last year around 40 people were recognised with a Civic Award. It has been deeply saddening for me that we weren't actually able to host the traditional ceremony for those recipients, but when COVID rules permitted, the Vice Chairman, Councillor Mary May, and I have travelled to recipients' homes and villages, to their towns, their hometowns and their villages, to thank them individually, and hearing about the selfless contribution made by so many to their Cornish communities has been truly inspirational for Mary and myself. And Steve, it was an utter privilege for me to be able to go to your home and be able to present you with an award and to thank you personally. So please pass on my best wishes as well to Mandy. Take care. Thank you. So Mary as well, I know perhaps I could actually invite you to say a few words. Perhaps you could turn on your camera and microphone. I know we've been together to many of these Civic Award presentations, and it has really been inspirational, hasn't it? And Mary, you've been Vice Chair for the last 2 years, and you're also Vice Chair for 2 years in the previous administration, and of course an incredible Chair in the first 2 years of this administration. So I have personally appreciated your guidance, and I know we have all appreciated your good humour. Could you perhaps turn on your camera, Mary, and say a few words? There.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your kind words. And you can see I've got lots of balloons in the background. And today it would have been traditional that you had a bouquet of flowers. So I can't give you the flowers, but these are the balloons.
Thank you.
So, Chairman, you used the inspirational word twice just now, and this was going to be my word for you. Because as we've heard from other councillors, you have been truly inspirational in the way you've chaired, conducted, been so patient with people at these virtual meetings for the past 12 months. You've embraced the virtualism. You've got on with it, and you've paved the way for us mere councillors to follow in your footsteps. You've been a true ambassador for Cornwall, the way you've attended functions. I mean, you know, this year has been, you know, you haven't been out and about, but you have made your presence known when you've done virtual meetings, especially with Remembrance the Poppies. I think everybody will remember, everybody will take that through, you know, the next year and into many others. But what I want to say is it's been a pleasure working with you. We've had some fun, and yeah, we did do our road trip and presented the awards, even though I broke down at the station at Liscard and I had to go knocking on doors with someone to start my car.
I remember.
But it was great, and I did value your friendship. Your family are just remarkable, that they support you. As councillors, we take our hat off to you, and I think let's give Hilary a round of applause. You know, a
virtual. Mary, I wasn't bringing you in to say all those kind of things. I'm very embarrassed now, but thank you, everybody.
I can't hear you, councillors. I can't hear you.
Oh, well, thank you, thank you, thank you.
So just looking past the stadium, sharing the stadium, some 67 speakers, and I know 3 or 4 kids go to the vote. Unfortunately, the stadium has yet to be built, but it was a momentous council meeting for me. The 1914-18 commemorations of the First World War I went up to Rainhead, 70 miles each way, but the welcome that the people gave me was terrific, and they are a little bit like Catholics, because I am one. They're into the church, they all had their bottles of wine, and they were quite merry, so all good. I too laid my fourth wreath at the Hoe on Armed Forces Day, very privileged, and to lay the wreath on behalf of Cornwall. So without further ado, this is your meeting, Chairman. The last 2 years have been yours, and it's right that you finish up and go out with a bang, but I can't burst the balloons for you. Thank you,
well, thank you so much, Mary, and thank you for all the claps. I wasn't bringing you in to say all those lovely words, but thank you. I've appreciated your calm support and your wise encouragement. It's been real teamwork, so thank you. So final words then. So colleagues, when Trelawney was imprisoned in that tower, the Cornish asked the reason why. And if I were to ask you all the reason why you became a councillor, you might each give me a variety of individual reasons, but at heart, we're all driven by a singular passion to make a positive difference, to be a voice for the people we represent. From Cape Cornwall in the sunset to the sheave wheels at Giver, from the soft Sennen sand to the mighty Tamar Bridge and the dainty bee orchids in the Bude marshes. We are the voices for the people of Cornwall and also for the nature of Cornwall. Now, at January's full council meeting, a previous Grand Bard, Maureen Fuller, graciously read a poem that had been written by a bard of the Cornish Gorseth for New County Hall, Lys Caernarfon, where we used to have our meetings of full council. So with apologies, colleagues, for my very dubious Cornish accent, I'm going to like to repeat this three-line poem to you now. Gwir a faith pub go, a G Lys Caernarfon, Pangluir live po, which in English, hopefully, is truth overcomes every falsehood within Lys Caernarfon when the voice of a land is heard. So you members, each and every one of you, have worked hard to be the voices of the people you represent. And in so doing, you have made a hugely significant contribution to the council and to Cornwall. Alongside your work in your communities, you've worked in the council's committees. You've brought motions to full council on topics as varied as the hosting of the Tour of Britain cycle race to phasing out single-use plastics from the Cornwall Council estate. Not forgetting, of course, the declaration of a climate change emergency. And can I just say at this juncture how moved I have been with the way that Cornwall's young people have made their views known on the issue of climate change. Oh, I think somebody has their microphone on. Oh. And of course there is COVID. There's no getting away from COVID. When we gathered together 4 years ago for the first annual meeting of this administration, none of us could have anticipated that we would be faced with the greatest public health challenge of our generation. And I'm extremely extremely proud of the focused yet caring way that councillors and staff have responded to the crisis. So thank you, one and all. But of course, we couldn't have done this without partnership working, without the city, town and parish councils, without the communities, or without our superb colleagues in the NHS and the voluntary sector. We have indeed seen the very best of people. Thank you, one and all. And this has all happened at a time when there has been significant transition at the senior leadership level of Cornwall Council. One of our strategic directors started working with us just a few days before the first pandemic hit, before the first lockdown. The interview process for another of our strategic directors had to be held online. And of course, last week we appointed a new Chief Fire Officer for Cornwall who shone at her online interview. And can I just take this opportunity to wish Catherine Billing the very best and thank outgoing Chief Fire Officer Mark Hewitt for his steadfast service to the Cornwall Fire and Rescue Service. I would also like to pay tribute to the calibre and the dedication of the senior leadership team for ensuring that Cornwall Council has operated smoothly. Particularly, my sincere, undying thanks to the incredible team of officers within the Civic Office and with the Insurance Service, present and retired, for ensuring our meetings operate smoothly. This has been a particular challenge for us as meetings have moved online, but officers have risen to the challenges magnificently, and my grateful thanks. But of course, it isn't just officers who have had to deal with the complexities of online meetings. As councillors, we've had to radically change the way we work, embracing Teams technology to work as online teams and learning a whole new language to enable our democratic governance to continue. And I can hear some more sounds, but yes, thank you, colleagues, for being willing to embrace that change. So for me, it's been a huge privilege to be Chairman of Cornwall Council, and I thank you for placing your trust in me. Part of the role of the Chair is to make presentations at citizenship ceremonies, and it's been a particular joy to witness the pride of people